stage. What you got to play? Generic drops for days. Still the people rage. Am I not insane? Can you stop and explain why these drops are so lame? Is money buying you fame? I'm fucking on, I'm killing it with this song. You haters can sing along or go back where you belong. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with giving up, moving on. Cause I took your girl to prom, she can't help but sing this song. Till the roof comes off, till the lights go out, till my legs give out, can't shut my mouth, till the smoke clears out, and my high progress. I'ma rip this shit till my bones collapse. Till the roof comes off, till the lights go out, till my legs give out, can't shut my mouth, till the smoke clears out, and my high progress. I'ma rip this shit till my bones collapse. I rap with a passion, yeah, I got it in me. I've been waiting quite a long time for y'all to hear me. It's about damn time you put some stock into me. You're either sponsoring me or fucking bothering me. And the fact is, we just practice on this madness. That is why our status is like a canvas. Chances our advancement is enhancing, and this new expansion's like a mansion. Comes off till the lights go out, till my legs give out, can't shut my mouth, till the smoke clears out, and my high progress. I'ma rip this shit till my bones collapse. Till the roof comes off, till the lights go out, till my legs give out, can't shut my mouth, till the smoke clears out, and my high progress. I'ma rip this shit till my bones collapse.
Welcome to the Dire Wolf Show, where we believe that America is exceptional and that our constitutional rights should never be infringed. I am Dire Wolf. On our show, we bring you the truth and debunk fake news. If you love laughing at the insanity of the regressive left, sit back and relax. Boy, do I have a show for you.
Welcome back, Wolfpack.
Sorry, I did a not very good countdown today because I was exonerating Tyre for just cause.
Welcome back, Wolfpack. Dire Wolf here for our weekly news recap from Behind Enemy Lines on YouTube, where speech is not free, the truth is demonetized. Alongside me is my hilarious co-host, Fox Trevize. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, not too bad, not too bad. We got a great show today. Great show. Can't wait.
Don't lie to them.
Well, no, I wrote most of it today, so.
Ooh, ouch, burn.
Oh, man.
So I know there'll be lots of problems with it. Anyways, thank you for everyone who makes this show happen. That'd be Ori, Kaylette, Nathan, Cameron, Tetris Freak, Slowpoke, Thunderican, who's female, the White Lion, Timberwolf, and the White Wolf, and Adder Lupus, and many others. Thank you very much for donating and making the show possible. This is all your fault. I blame you. If you guys want to help out and also share some part of that blame, you please share, like, subscribe, whatever platform you find us on. Please follow us on Rumble, though, because I hate YouTube. I'd like to not be here.
Yes. YouTube sucks.
YouTube is the worst. It is, however, where we started. So I'll have to go back to Dire from a few years ago and punch him in the face at some point.
Yeah, if only you were never on YouTube, then I never would have found you and got sucked into this whole thing.
Exactly.
So, you know.
I mean, because of YouTube, I am now stuck with Fox.
It's true.
And why couldn't I, a couple years ago, thought, hey, I should join Rumble.
Yeah, I mean, if you had only known how dangerous it was to, put yourself out there like that, where someone like me could, glom onto you, and
He's
a
predator.
Yes, like just like parasite, just suck down your entire organization until I have complete control over it.
Help. Anyways, let's move to our first funny comments.
So again, like Dyer said, we appreciate you guys helping us, but if any of you could maybe help out Kamala Harris, she definitely needs it.
A lot.
This is now a weekly segment where we just play a clip unedited of Kamala Harris saying something, presumably off of a teleprompter. I'm not sure. So we do like to play the game Where in the World is Kamala Harris, and today she is in Jamaica, which is where her great-grandfather owned slaves. Actually, the last slave in Jamaica was owned by Kamala Harris's great-grandfather. So interesting context there. I'm not sure if her trip there had anything to do with owning slaves. I do know that Kamala Harris is one of the few modern-day Americans to own slaves, which she did so in California.
The first one to have done it semi-legally.
Well, I mean, it was legal only in the sense that she was the attorney general and did not prosecute herself.
She decided it was legal.
Yes. So let's, again, completely unaware of what she's doing in Jamaica. Let's see what she has to say there. Well, what is she going to do for Jamaica?
We also recognize, just as it has been in the United States for Jamaica, one of the issues that has been presented as an issue that is economic in the way of its impact has been the pandemic. So to that end, we are announcing today also that we will assist Jamaica in COVID recovery by assisting in terms of the recovery efforts in Jamaica that have been essential to, I believe, what is necessary to strengthen not only the issue of public health, but also the economy.
Fox,
Wow.
What the fuck did she just say?
Well, she said that economic issues are issues which are economic in nature, and issues in their effect that she would like to spend your taxpayer money on. That was the part that was clear. It's unclear why, but it's very clear that she's going to send them U.S. taxpayer dollars. It's unclear why.
Yeah, so the crazy thing about Kamala is she says so many words but doesn't say anything. And it's beyond the filler language that people in debates have, like, preloaded messages. They have a canned statement on every topic that if they don't know the answer immediately to the question that was asked, they can talk about something related to it they had prepared.
Well, she's clearly reading off of prepared remarks too.
Right, so that's crazy part. Like, it's not that. It's not impromptu, like, circle back language where you talk about something you know and then get back
a circle
to the question.
something language.
Yeah. She is attempting to give a prepared statement and still can't give a concise, logical, understandable sentence. It's insane that she uses so many words to say nothing. All we know is that she is saying that America is going to spend tax dollars to help Jamaica with COVID relief spending.
It's almost like the majority of her political experience has not been based on her ability to form coherent sentences.
She was a fucking lawyer. They write for a living.
Well, clearly she doesn't. Let's listen to that again though, because it's when you're first listening to it, it just kind of turns your brain off because there's nothing, like, your mind is continuously trying to make sense of what it's receiving from input. But when you start hearing just gobbledygook nonsense like Kamala Harris or this show, it just turns off your brain and you don't actually hear it. Let's watch and listen one more time just for the record. Kamala Harris's just genius level first woman, first black, first Indian vice president ever. Let's hear how qualified she is for the job. Definitely not a diversity hire.
We also recognize, just as it has been in the United States for Jamaica, one of the issues that has been presented as an issue that is economic in
those issues that have been presented as issues. Wow. So profound. So profound.
Economic in the way of its impact has been the pandemic. So to that end, we are announcing today also that we will assist Jamaica in COVID recovery by assisting in terms of the recovery effort.
We're going to be assisting Jamaica by assisting them. Oof.
That's brilliant.
Man, wow. I'm speechless.
In Jamaica that have been essential to, I believe, what is necessary to strengthen not only the issue of public health, but also the economy.
Yes. Essential to what she believes is the strength. Wow.
She's no Condoleezza Rice, you know?
Yeah.
The thing is, racists are actually going to use Kamala Harris as an example of, like, see, different minority group put in minority group here can't really do the job. That's why white people are superior. Me quoting someone who is a deplorable. Then they're going to use her as an example because the first black vice president did a terrible job. She's clearly an idiot because. They are using someone as an example that they're saying, oh, look, this is the first black vice president. But they picked someone who was clearly inept. And it's a terrible example. There are plenty of African American women who are already in positions of power who are actually qualified for the job. I'm sure if they wanted to, they could have found one to be vice president. But no, for some reason, out of the many qualified female black politicians, they pick someone who is a complete idiot.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what affirmative action does, right? You're taking somebody who's unqualified and elevating them just for their racial characteristics. I mean, it's literal tokenization. The way that you can tell if somebody is being tokenized is if they are unable to fulfill the requirements of the job, that they have no discernible skill set, which makes them qualified for the position that they've been elevated to. You are only putting her there as a decoration. I mean, it's actually a minstrel show that Joe Biden has put on here by putting an unqualified, quote-unquote, black woman there just for the visual of it. And that's what minstrel shows were, is they were just for the visual aspect of it, not really having somebody there who's the actual person, but just the visual aspect of it. And that's what Kamala Harris is doing right now.
The crazy part is not that you should never be hiring someone or even considering hiring someone because of their gender or their race, or considering that, but if they really wanted to, they could have considered those options and still found someone who's able to do the job. They must have intentionally looked for someone who had the right skin color and right sex, but intentionally picked someone who wasn't qualified. I don't know, to make Biden look better. I don't know, because you could have found someone with those characteristics that was actually able to do the job, and they clearly picked someone who was non-threatening to Biden.
Well, yeah, I don't know about non-threatening. She is very threatening, just not very good at her job.
Politically, so, I think she's not threatening. No one liked her, right? There's no chance that they're going to want her over Biden. That might have been the strategy.
Well, yeah, so they've kind of got, the Democrats have kind of got this death spiral going, right? Because Joe Biden is so unqualified, but they had to put him in because it would have, if they didn't get him in, it would have just unraveled this very real Democrat conspiracy fact that has clearly been going on for the last several years, wrapping up Trump and all these fake things, which are now collapsing. The inappropriate use of the intelligence state, the obvious corruption that they've been using to launder through Ukraine and other places around the world. There's all of these things that they had to get Joe in because Joe's so deeply buried in it. They're like, okay, well, we got to get Joe in there to make sure that we can cover all this stuff up. But at the same time, Joe's so inept that they are now in a death spiral of that they have to surround him with other inept people so as to not outshine him. If they, God forbid, had a competent vice president, and you had, imagine if you had a competent vice president in the current situation, and Joe was acting the way he was, and then you had a competent vice president that the world and the country could go to look to. I mean, that wouldn't be very good for Joe Biden's power base, would it?
No, would be.
Yeah. All right. Well, our next goof here would be Gavin Newsom, who is the governor, supposedly, of California, and
nice try. I don't believe he knows how to read.
Yeah. So he tweeted this out today, or actually a couple days ago. Gavin Newsom, quote, reading some banned books to figure out what these states are so afraid of. So let's see what books he's reading. First off, yes, as Dyer said, I don't believe that he knows how to read. Beloved, I don't know what that is. I've heard it's a more recent novel, and then it's of low quality as compared to the other novels in the stack here. But he's got To Kill a Mockingbird. Dyer, which political sect was trying to ban To Kill a Mockingbird?
Democrats.
Was that Democrats? Why was that? Because
I think one of the characters was racist. Or said something racist?
No, they didn't like that there was black people in there. It was because the black people talked like, I guess, contemporary black people as relative.
Oh, they spoke like how black people back then.
Yeah.
In the time that they were.
Yeah.
The story.
So the To Kill a Mockingbird. Okay, so he didn't say which states. So I guess he's trying to figure out why his fellow Democrats are so scared of To Kill a Mockingbird and the black people in there. Then he's got 1984, which is a book literally about the Democrat Party, I believe. It's actually about what the Democrats are trying to do. I mean, that's essentially their playbook. Maybe he's trying to read it to figure out why the states are so scared of the Democrat Party.
Is that Beloved by Toni Morrison?
Yes.
So that's a story from the American Civil War that was inspired by a story about an African American slave.
Gotcha. So, but yeah, maybe he's trying to figure out why the Republicans are so scared of the Democrat Party by reading 1984. But 1984, I don't know that that's. I would think that right-wing states would want to have 1984 be read because it's very obviously a warning message as to how the Democrats and globalists are going right now. I can't tell what the next book down is, this yellow one. And then you've got the bottom book is Mouse, which is the graphic novelization of the story that happened in Germany of how the Jews were treated and all of those things.
But
as
shown,
shown,
the Jews with mice. In the
yes,
same story.
as shown through the anthropomorphization of them as mice and rats, and Hitler as, I believe, a cat.
Yeah.
Which was interesting. And that was recently not banned, I believe. I believe it was taken off of a curriculum. So it wasn't that it was banned, it was just taken out.
Still
of
in the library, just not in the lesson plan.
And I believe that was done by I guess they wanted to say that was a right-wing group, though I find it hard to believe that any right wing at this point has control of the school system. So that one's probably a hit or a miss there. But so he's reading a lot of books here that have either been banned by the Democrats, give warnings about the Democrats, or were banned by not necessarily Republicans. So I'm not really sure what he's trying to go for here. Maybe he should read some news instead of some books here.
That is pretty funny. Yeah. So the Democrats have been and remain the party of book burning. I know if you go far back enough, the Republicans have done that themselves, but not recent. And the books that he's showing are books that the Democrats have opposed, have had tried to remove from schools, except for in the case of Mouse. That is one that was not removed at all. It was just they aren't teaching it in the curriculum. That's very different. There's lots of books we don't teach in the curriculum. Does that mean they're banned? No, it doesn't.
Yeah, I'm surprised he's not reading any of the books that the Democrats are trying to get pushed in there that have, pedophilia in them, or pedophilia, or the ones that the Democrats really want in there, which were the ones with also pedophilia.
Yes. Those are the only books that the Republicans have been trying to remove from curriculum and from schools entirely because they are just grooming books.
Yeah.
And they're meant for little kids, trying to sexualize the kids and get them used to sexual topics. Jeez, this is crazy.
So that was our funny Democrats this week. I'm sure there'll be more next week. I'm just I can't wait for the next Kamalaism to come out. They're just better. They get better and better and better. And I'm sure
there was more. We just didn't get videos of them.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, as you pointed out this week, Dyer, a lot of these kind of viral videos, these viral moments of Biden or someone from the administration saying something absolutely ridiculous. You were pointing out this week, you were watching a longer form, a longer clip of one of his speeches, and you noticed a few things in there that hadn't gotten any traction, didn't go viral at all, but they were just as outrageous. And you were making the point that there's so many of these instances, nearly everything that they're saying is outrageous in some way, but there's only like so much bandwidth for stuff going viral. And so a lot of these clips that do go viral, they represent one out of like maybe five. One of them went viral while the other four just were bad, but they weren't bad enough that they overtook this particular one. So there's a lot of untapped clips out there.
I watched hours of briefings or statements from Nancy Pelosi and Biden and a few others, and it was a slew of crazy statements they made. Each one of them we could have commented on, but we have only so much time in the show, and we can only address so many issues, and there were things that are more important. I can't just do a show every single Sunday about something crazy they said over and over again, right? We get it. They're idiots. They say things that have no basis in reality, and those are the people who are trying to push policy on us. But anyways, moving on.
All right. So our first story tonight, we'll let Dyer take it away.
Okay, so probably the most important news we will cover tonight. President Donald J. Trump got a hole-in-one last week. Yep, a hole-in-one.
Grab that course by the hole.
Exactly. Grab that course by the hole. In a press release detailing the impressive feat, Trump said this.
Many people are asking, so I'll give it to you now. It's 100% true. While playing with the legendary golfer Ernie Els, Gene Sowers, Ken Duke, and Mike Goddess, I made a hole-in-one. The best
I can't believe this
hole
is news.
ever. It took place at Trump International Golf Club in West Palm Beach, Florida, on the 7th hole, which was playing 181 yards into a slight wind. I hit a 5-iron, which sailed magnificently into a rather strong wind, approximately 5 feet of cut, whereupon it bounced twice, and then went clank into the hole.
Oh my God, why is this news?
Of course it's news, Dyer. It's Donald Trump hitting a hole-in-one. It's got to be news.
Okay, so in other Trump-related news, he is also apparently suing Hillary Clinton for her role. For some reason, I read that as whole.
He's suing her hole.
Suing Hillary Clinton for her role in the hoax Russia-Gate scandal.
Yes. Alrighty, so this comes from Reuters. Now, again, we did cover the previous story because Trump did actually make a press release for it.
Why would you do a press release about that?
Why wouldn't you, Dyer? Are you telling me that if you got a hole-in-one golfing that you wouldn't do a press release? Come on, Dyer.
Okay, if I was going to do a press release and I had the options of I made a hole-in-one and also Hillary Clinton orchestrated a hoax on our entire country costing billions of dollars.
But why not both? He's literally got both.
And subverting our elections. I'd probably go with the Hillary Clinton one first, at least.
We've got time to do both, Dyer. It's Trump's very good week. Alrighty, so from Reuters, let's see here. So Donald Trump sues Hillary Clinton and others over the 2016 Russia collusion allegations, which if he's suing them, then there's a little bit more substance there than just an allegation. Alrighty, so the start of the Reuters article just kind of goes through the background, but I think you guys know the background of the Russia collusion hoax. So we'll just skip to the part that has the quotes from the lawsuit here. So quoting from the lawsuit here, let's see here, quote, acting in concert, the defendants maliciously conspired to weave a false narrative that their Republican opponent, Donald J. Trump, was colluding with a hostile foreign sovereignty. the former president alleges in the 108-page lawsuit filed in federal court in Florida. Well, that's quite the allegation there. All right, the suit alleges racketeering, a conspiracy to commit injurious falsehoods. Yes, that's definitely true, among other claims. A Clinton representative did not immediately respond to the request for comment. I wonder why. The suit seeks compensatory and punitive damages. Trump says he was forced to incur expenses in an amount to be determined at trial, but known to be in excess of $24 million, and is continuing to accrue in the form of defense costs, legal fees, and related expenses. The defendants in Trump's lawsuit include Christopher Steele, a former British intelligence officer. Ooh, that's great. That he's actually going to be suing Steele himself. That'd be great.
Good.
Awesome. All right. And while it was a pretty bad week for Hillary and a pretty great week for Trump, we also have this story, which just adds to the pile from the New York Post.
So it goes, the Federal Election Commission has fined both Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign and the Democrat National Committee for lying about how they spent money used to fund the now debunked Steele dossier on former President Donald Trump. The Clinton campaign and the DNC will be forced to pay $8,000 and $105,000 respectively.
So just the cost of stealing an entire election and just making everything up, it cost you a grand total of $113,000.
They're gonna shrug that off.
Wow, man, that's just oof. I mean, like that's real serious sanctions right there, Dyer. You can just.
I mean, it's nice that they're recognizing that this happened and that is now part of history that this happened and that there was a consequence, but that is not enough consequence to actually get justice. It's kind of a slap in your face that this, because it's also a sign that this is all they're gonna get. You know.
Well, and it's kind of like what they did was so above and beyond what was even imagined by the laws. Like there is no fine category that fits what they did. It was so like egregiously new and unique as to what they did.
I slightly disagree. There are laws that have far more severe punishments if you are willing to accept that they committed them, but they're not willing to do that because of the severe consequences.
Yeah.
Like they actually committed treason.
Yes. Not to mince words, they did.
Yes.
And so did the intelligence agents that helped them.
Right. So if you are willing to accept the reality that they committed treason, now you have a very high minimum punishment, and it's not $8,000 fucking dollars. All right. So
it's a rope.
It's a rope. So $8,000 and $105,000 respectively for misleading payments. Mislabeling payments for that ultimately went to Fusion GPS and consulting firm. That's the consulting firm that commissioned the dossier, according to FEC documents viewed by the Post. See, they're not just like the mob wasn't actually sued for all the crimes the mob committed. What's his name? The leader of the mob. He got tax evasion. Right.
Yeah.
They're going after a very small included crime of mislabeling how they spent their campaign funds, which I'm sorry, that wasn't the thing that got us very angry at them.
They labeled them as legal defense instead of treason, and they're taking issue that they mislabeled it when the issue is that they spent money on treason.
Yeah. Like, geez, talking about missing the forest for the trees, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is a bureaucratic state, right? So you just layer on this just impermeable miasma of regulations, and then when you or I, a political adversary, breaks them, we go away for life. When a political ally like Hillary breaks them, well, we'll just reinterpret it to be these small little things and move on.
Yeah, like for instance, what's the guy who made those political films about Hillary and
D'Souza.
D'Souza. Dinesh D'Souza. he did the same. Oh, sorry. He did something less serious. He paid too much money to a campaign.
Yes. I think he gave was it 22 grand to one of his friends who was running for office, and then
25, I think.
What's that?
It was 25, but regardless.
And then he gave another 25 to one of his other friends and had them donate to the same person. And they basically turned this into this like giant money laundering scandal that he gave an extra $25,000 to like a local candidate, which, you know, there is problems with that. But like, again, Hillary's committing treason and paying money for essentially FBI sting operations and utilizing foreign intelligence services to fabricate these quote-unquote intelligence documents.
Yeah, even if you want to ignore the fact that she committed treason, if you just focus on the money crimes that are committed here, the money crime committed by Dinesh D'Souza was less severe than her and her campaign mislabeling several very large payments for opposition research. They're both money-related crimes related to campaign funding, and she gets a small fine, as do most campaigns that have campaign finance violations. And Dinesh D'Souza goes to fucking jail for a year.
Wild.
So even when the way the laws are set up is, even if you commit the same crime, they have the wide range of punishments.
Yeah, it's prosecutorial discretion is what they call it. So that
it's called fucking your enemies.
Yeah, so like every little thing, like jaywalking, you know, it might be punishable up to and including death, but they've got prosecutorial discretion. So if you're somebody that they like, they'll use their discretion to say, well, we'll just slap you on the wrist. If you're somebody they don't like, well, we'll put you in jail.
Exactly. So the fines stem from a complaint originally filed in 2018 by the Coolidge-Reagan Foundation, which was informed of the outcome on Tuesday. The Clinton campaign and the DNC paid more than $1 million combined to powerful Democrat law firm Perkins Coie, which engaged Fusion GPS. What?
Perkins Coie.
Sorry, Perkins Coie, which engaged Fusion GPS to dig for dirt on Trump. So $1 million in mislabeled funds versus the 25 or whatever it was $1,000 that was doubled by Dinesh D'Souza. One was more severe than the other. So Fusion GPS, in turn, hired former British spy Christopher Steele, whose namesake dossier included allegations that Russia security services possessed a tape. So allegations that Russian security services possessed a tape of Trump in a Moscow hotel room with prostitutes who were supposedly urinating on a bed where the Obamas had previously stayed. Which is hilarious, by the way, and also completely false.
Yes.
So the FEC said Clinton and the DNC claimed the money given to Perkins Coie, to hire Fusion GPS was reported on disclosure forms as having gone towards, quote, legal advice and services.
Maybe part of it was that they were having it was like legal advice and services as in like laundering treason through a law firm.
yeah it was labeled as legal advice and services, but it should have been labeled as opposition research. But you know what, if they actually had put their money towards legal advice and services, maybe they would have been advised to not commit treason.
Well, I mean, it is a DC law firm, so unlikely.
But that's the article.
Alrighty. Well,
what a week.
Yeah, that was I would say that was a pretty good week for Trump, a pretty bad week for Hillary, and I guess we'll see what happens next week.
I would say it wasn't bad enough of a week for Hillary.
It wasn't. But I mean, come on. I mean, Trump got a hole in one. That's got to be a pretty
good job,
week, right?
Trump, on your hole in one. That is definitely the most important story for this week.
That is definitely.
I care so much about that.
I heard it was the best hole in one.
You know, there was a left-wing attack meme I saw saying that something about Biden not having time to golf like Trump did. That was kind of the point.
I bet he can't actually swing an iron that hard.
That was my statement. Like, you're saying this like it's a negative that Biden doesn't golf. I don't think he can golf. The fact that Trump was able to be a better president by far and also had time to play golf shows that your candidate is not in a good situation.
Yeah, like I don't think Biden could swing an iron. I really don't. I think he'd fall over. I mean, have you been golfing before?
You can't even go upstairs.
Have you been golfing before?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, like, yes, it is a lot of not doing hard work, but like when you're swinging the iron, you gotta put some fast twitch effort into it, and you gotta balance. If you just swing that thing and you don't have any balance, you're gonna fall over.
Yeah,
So,
Biden definitely can't swing it like he used to, you know?
yeah, I mean, the other thing that, causes you to not have time to go golfing is, sleeping for 12 or 14 hours a day, and also going back to Delaware for 130 days of the, 370 days you've been in office.
If Biden went golfing, he would get lost, and they would never find him.
The issue with the golfing is, as president, the issue with the golfing that the common man you will usually critique is not that they're going golfing, it's that they're wasting time when they're supposed to be working as the president. And it's a valid criticism. So, but if you want to look at Joe, yes, he's not using his quote unquote free time to go golfing, but he's also, like I said, he's been back to his home in Delaware nearly every weekend of his presidency for 2 or 3 days. So, to the extent that he's not golfing, he's still wasting time not doing presidential things.
Yeah, Trump may have gone golfing a lot of times, but he still spent more time actually working as president, where Biden barely does that.
Yes. Alrighty. Well, our next story here is story C, which comes after story A.
That makes sense.
Yes. And I believe that there's 3 or 4 D's stories.
Well, you just are a big fan of D, man. I get it.
Yep, that's why every story is a D. Alrighty, our next story is CNN. They had a fun week this week. They released CNN CNN Plus, which apparently is a minus. I keep reading this and my brain keeps trying to fill in the gap of LGBTQ stuff where it's CNN Plus AQI ampersand. Anytime I hear an acronym with plus on it, I just think the LGBTQ stuff now.
So this is what I think of, right? Because in my wife's language, if you say massage plus, it means massage plus sex or anything plus. It's that.
Well, that would be some massage plus. What's plus mean? What is plus?
So it's it's CNN, but more sex.
CNN's porn channel. There's I think it's Russian. I think it was a Russian newscast, but it was naked news.
Naked news.
Yeah. Maybe that's what CNN's trying. I mean, that would be the only way to get it through. Though it sounds like their production team, that's not the kind of nakedness that they're interested in.
No, definitely not.
All right, so CNN this week, they launched a brand new way to lie to you this week called CNN Plus.
Wow.
It's just what the market was demanding. The streaming service that nobody asked for is projected to be the best place for pedophiles with production experience to find employment in this tough economy.
Wait. CNN that's struggling to have any people who watch their content when it's free has started a service where you have to subscribe.
Yes, where you have to pay them extra. People who've been canceling their entire cable package just because of CNN will now presumably pay just for CNN.
Okay, Fox, we're in the CNN boardroom, okay? All right, sir, we have cratering viewership. People are refusing to watch our content, even if we pay them to. Even when the government is putting in airports to force it on people are refusing to watch our content. How do we fix this, sir?
Well, it doesn't really matter how we fix it, Dyer. After the arrest of and not suicide of Jeffrey Epstein, there is a lot of unemployed pedophiles right now, and CNN is expected to pick up the slack. So figure out a way.
So how about this, Bradia? We make them pay us for the content they don't want to watch.
Exactly.
Fucking brilliant.
And that'll be a little bit later in the story, but the CNN Plus was actually brainchild and conceived before Mark Zucker had his untimely demise. So I think some of this was just on the rails and too far along to stop after CNN's leadership changed. And there's a little bit later in the story here, but we'll talk about that because I think that the current leadership of CNN is not. They're also nonplussed about CNN Plus, so we'll see how that goes. So just hours after CNN Plus launched, many social media users noticed the post that I have on the screen right now. While it's not possible to tell, the speculation is that the initial numbers of subscribers were so low that CNN Plus needed a way to bolster its day one subscribers by offering half off for life. So normally you would release it and then see what the subscribers are, but then they immediately, within about 2 hours of it going live, they posted this to everybody that it was now half off,
but
for
only
life.
on the monthly, not the annual.
I guess, I don't know.
Spend more money, get less.
It's a limited time offer, Dyer. Don't you feel compelled to act now? If you don't act now, it'll go away forever, Dyer.
I don't know. There's not enough flashy colors.
I know, right? Yeah, it's very drab, very drab color scheme here.
Usually, you try to encourage the
Nazi fags.
How dare
No,
you?
don't encourage them.
Using
Never
the-
encourage them.
Why would you do that?
Not sure why, but CNN Plus just reminds me of the book 1984, where Newspeak, which changed all
That's
the
what I'm
language to
thinking,
things
too.
like double plus ungood. CNN Plus is just Newspeak authoritarian for CNN equals good.
Yeah, CNN's double plus good.
You don't want to watch Fox. They're not a plus.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, imagine. Yeah, so it's like, again, it's CNN, but like more. It's just, oh wow. It's also got all of the Fox News hosts that couldn't survive. What was it? Chris something. Who's that Fox News host that just left?
I don't remember his name. Sorry.
It's Chris.
He's
something.
dead to me.
Yeah, he's dead to me. I think Shep Smith is over there too now. So it's all the ones that you hated are now over on CNN. Again, so we don't know. There's no way to know for sure. The real subscriber count is hidden. However, it's widely speculated that the day one numbers were not good, and that is the reason for the immediate save 50% for life. Does that seem more compelling to you, Dyer, to pay half as much for CNN than paying full price for it?
Sorry, the wife called me mid-show.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's interesting because actually one of the shows on CNN Plus is Anderson Cooper, who is gay, and also his mother was a CIA agent. Yeah. He has a show on parenting advice, actually. I'm not kidding. Did you know that?
I would not go to him for a parenting advice.
Does that make you more inclined to get CNN Plus so you can get Anderson Cooper's hot parenting tips?
No, I don't think I'd be spending money, even though it'd probably give us content for the show. I don't think I can bear to give them money for something like
All
that.
right, so somebody do the Streamlabs chat for $30, and if you do that for $30, we will get 1 month of CNN Plus. And
Fox, do you know what you're doing? If they spend money on it, I'll be forced to watch it.
I will force Dyer to watch 3 shows from CNN Plus, and we'll do a report on it. $30.
No. Why would you do it?
Because I'll do
you don't
anything
care
for
about my
money,
sanity
Dyer.
at all, do you? You are evil.
I'll do anything to you for money.
Okay, if someone actually gave us money to buy this, they're giving money to CNN for one thing, and then they're forcing me. I would have to make sure it wasn't wasted.
Well, yeah. So I mean, the question is it the trade-off of torturing Dyer? Is that worth giving $3 to CNN?
Fucking hell.
I think it's worth like $15, to be honest.
I'd probably be their first subscriber.
For $3 a month for For 10 cents a day, you could feed a starving
CNN host.
Don
We
Lemon.
need to do a commercial with
Yeah.
the sad music and a CNN host.
Yeah, you
needing
could,
just
for 10 cents a day, you could feed a Don Lemon.
oh my god.
They're starving Don Lemons on the verge of unemployment, and they need your help.
I can't believe that we are trying to get money sent to CNN. Anyway, so this assumption was somewhat backed after a report from a Fox Business correspondent, Charles Gasparino, that CNN Plus employees are already, quote, bracing for a layoff possibly as soon as May amid projections of lackluster sales / no sales, and that CNN's parent company may already be looking to merge CNN Plus with other streaming services like Discovery Plus. Oof.
Yeah, so they're already looking to cannibalize it. It was day one.
Okay, so here's what I think happened, man. No joke. I think that they are so far down the pipe. They invested so much time and money. They hired people for the jobs, had them preparing to do the work, and then, the ownership changed, and they're like, okay, shoot, if we stop right now and don't launch, we lose all of this. But if we launch and keep a brave face and show that, yeah, this could be something, this could be profitable, if we show everyone else, yeah, this is a thing you want, then they can sell / merge it and recoup some of the losses.
Yeah, so I would say this was probably an 18-month plus venture to get it going and off the ground. And Jeff Zucker just left like 2 or 3 months ago, and it was no secret at the time when he was replaced that the parent company, which I think is Turner, for CNN, they've not been happy with the direction CNN's been going. Obviously, the CNN ratings are about as low as they can get now, and they've been generally nonplussed with CNN's performance. But like you said, they were so far down the trail of investing in CNN Plus that they really had no choice but to launch it, because to have that much money just go away and just disappear into nothingness would cause such a ripple with the financial books and cause a big problem for the stock portfolios. That would cause a massive dip in CNN stock. So they couldn't do that. It would be too big of a shock to the investors, and they had to. They were committed. At that point, they were committed, and they had to continue on with it. But just because they have to continue on with it doesn't mean that they can't make, other plans for its gradual decline or, non-starter issues.
Yeah.
So as for CNN Home, which I guess should it be CNN minus? How do we distinguish between them? Is it because you got CNN Plus? Should it be CNN minus? We'll call them CNN minus. There we go.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so CNN minus this week, they had, meanwhile, they had a historic moment caught on air this week. It was never before seen, and I think part of this is just the regular CNN hosts. They, while they got CNN Plus going on, they know that CNN Plus is going to be a flop, and so they're trying to reimagine what does CNN as a cable channel mean to them. So in the spirit of rediscovering what does CNN mean, they had this live on air broadcast this week. It is never before seen on CNN. It's brand new, and we're bringing that to you right now with this clip.
So there's a lot of issues that the Justice Department has looked into, including, of course, this laptop that on the right wing has featured a lot of stories about Hunter Biden. We know the FBI has possession of it, and that they believe it is his laptop, that the contents of it are his.
Wow. Admitting to the Hunter Biden laptop live on air. So for the first time ever, non-fake news was broadcast on CNN. Absolutely
Mark
historic.
the date.
It is
that
historic.
Also is them admitting that Hunter Biden has committed a bunch of crimes.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So buried in that very quick segment was, yes, the Hunter Biden laptop is real. Yes, the FBI has the laptop. And yes, the things on the laptop are extremely damning and probably true. about what Hunter Biden did. And one of the things that we keep talking about, that we keep bringing up, is one of the key things in the laptop is proof that Joe Biden and Hunter Biden shared a bank account in which all of the dirty money that Hunter was getting, Joe Biden had access to. That was known for sure.
With the express agreement that 10% of it was intended for him.
Well, that was just on one particular transaction. That wasn't.
He said to his sister that 10% of everything he makes goes to his father.
Oh,
he complained about it.
There you go. Well, that's kind of rough when your dad is stealing money from you like that.
Yeah, you only have money because he's selling his influence.
Joe Biden is just basically just taking crack right out of Hunter Biden's mouth.
I don't want to defend Biden here, but goddamn, his son is so unappreciative of what he's doing.
I know, right? He's just ungrateful bastard. I wonder if Bo was any more appreciative of the dirty deals that he got.
I don't know, but they're all dirty. The entire Biden Inc.
Yes. So, but yeah, and then they did couch it a little bit, and the right wing conspiracy nuts for the last 2 years have been getting a lot of stuff out of this laptop, which we're now admitting is true 2 years after it was found.
Yeah, those crazy right wingers, right?
Yeah,
always knowing and saying true things years before it's popular to say it.
How dare they?
Everything that's Russian disinformation or fake news on CNN, anything they say is fake news that the Republicans say a year later is conspiracy fact.
It's a little bit weird for them to couch it like that, because I would imagine that if they'd just been ignoring it for 2 years and now they want to talk about it, just talk about it. Why would you tell your audience, oh yeah, we didn't talk about this for 2 years. We're admitting that it's real now, but the right wing, they've been talking about it for the last 2 years nonstop. Why would you admit that to your audience, that you purposefully hid a story for 2 years that turns out to be true?
You think
that's a weird flex.
You think they'd realize they were making themselves look bad, that they were ignoring a story that was true, that their competitor knew was true for years in advance, that you think they would look bad, but that would require some level of introspection. They don't have that.
Maybe CNN Plus the plus is introspection.
I thought it was just gonna be this clip, but no clothing on.
Oh well, I mean, I don't know if that would be any better. I'm not straight, but I don't know if she was. I wouldn't exactly call her attractive.
Not my type.
Well. All right, another person who's not my type would be Jen Psaki. So we have this exclusive from Axios. It was a great week for Trump. It was a terrible week for Hillary, and it was not so great a week for most of the mainstream media. We got an exclusive from Axios. Jen Psaki is planning to leave the White House this spring for an MSNBC gig.
Oh, poor MSNBC.
Yeah. So CNN's not the only ones making moves against Biden. We have this story from Axios, which skipping down to the details section here. So let's see here. So Axios says Jen Psaki has been in close consultation with the White House's counsel, meaning their lawyers, about her departure, according to two sources familiar with the plans. She has been treading carefully on the ethics and legal aspects of her plans.
Sorry. Jen Psaki ethics in the same sentence.
Oh, wait. You just wait, Dyer. You just wait. You've got no idea what's about to happen on this. You hold that thought. So they continue. No contracts have been signed yet. Government ethics rules have stipulations about how public employees can pursue private sector job opportunities while in office. And actually, Trump tried to strengthen those and got shot down by the Democrats. He was trying to make it so that you couldn't find any kind of industry job within 5 years of leaving the White House, because he didn't want you just trading on your White House position. He wanted you to be loyal to the administration and not just trying to enrich yourself like Jen Psaki clearly is. Jen Psaki also told some senior officials at the White House about her departure and her plans to join MSNBC, according to two sources. Dyer, could you imagine having to admit to your superiors that you were going to get a job at MSNBC? Wouldn't that just be extremely embarrassing?
Very embarrassing.
I know that this is supposed to be a big deal for her, but I just can't get past the fact of wow, like you had to admit to somebody that you're going to get an MSNBC job.
Yeah, like it's not even like the big leagues of liberal media, right?
I know,
MSNBC
right?
has,
Like,
in 2021 had 1.5 million primetime viewers up in the entire fucking year.
Oh yeah, I know.
CNN.
Exactly. Like, so, like, yeah, I would go, like, I could see, like, going to CNN, like, okay, like, wow, it's like a big name, but, like, MSNBC is such a backbencher.
Yeah, CNN made like 50 times the viewers. 50 times more viewers, and they are the big leagues of Democrat media. And then CNN is failing too. Don't make me. I'm not building them up. That's actually not a lot of viewers for a year, right? 56 million. That is low compared to Fox News.
Well,
but they are in a different league than MSNBC. MSNBC is the backbenchers, the rejects, and that's what Jen Psaki got. Probably because she's coming from a administration of backbenchers.
Well, I mean, we've seen her press conferences. She's no front runner. She's no all-star.
Psaki, you know?
Yeah. It'll just be a half hour of her saying, like, "Oh, here's a story that we'll circle back to. Here's another story. We'll circle back to it."
She'll just bring on a bunch of guests, ask them a question. They'll ask her a question, and she'll just say, "And we'll circle back to that and move to the next person."
Yeah, she should do like the Five, like a clone of that, and just call it The Circle, and they just keep going in a circle, not saying anything. But yeah, no, I mean, you're definitely right on them being a completely different league. The key fact, the key metric for that being, you probably don't hear us or any of the other commentators talk about MSNBC hardly ever. We talk about CNN all the time, but MSNBC is just completely irrelevant. The only reason why we talk about CNN is because they at least have some thread of relevance to them, because enough people watch them that it's problematic when they say stupid things or lie about stuff. But if MSNBC lies about stuff, who the hell cares? I mean, it's like 4chan lying about something. It has approximately the same viewership.
Yeah, about
none.
Probably less, actually. I think about it. I think more than 1.5 million people read Reddit each year.
Yeah, just about. All right. So Axios continues with some of the details here. So Psaki has not formally told the White House press team about her departure, an administration source tells Axios. MSNBC has been working with its compliance lawyers to make sure their conversations didn't violate any government regulations, according to a source close to the matter. And Psaki is now in exclusive talks with MSNBC, and the deal is nearly finalized. It was reported by Puck last month that Psaki also had conversations with CNN and other networks, had expressed interest in signing her. I don't know, it sounds like she's expressed interest in signing with them, and CNN's like, come on, we're not that low.
Yeah, she's begging.
CNN they just launched an entire new channel essentially with CNN Plus, which has essentially infinite time, right? Like during the cable channel, they have a limited number of slots per day, but CNN Plus does not have a limitation in slots. They had plenty of room.
Still, we have no room for you.
Yeah, I mean, you would think, like, if this was not the current universe, if we were in like a more sane version, not Clown World, you know, having the former press secretary of the President of the United States having an exclusive show on your brand new streaming platform, that sounds like it would be a really good deal. But then you look at the reality of who they're actually talking about, and it's Psaki and CNN, and it's like, yeah, well, you know, we may be CNN, but, you know, we're not that low.
The fact that she's going to MSNBC shows she's desperate to get off the boat, right? She wants to get off the sinking Biden administration, and she's going for anyone who will take her. That is, like, it's a step down. It's a massive step down, not progression in her career. That shows desperation.
Yeah. So for MSNBC, Psaki will be essentially joining MSNBC Plus, which they call Peacock. and which is their own streaming service, which you've probably seen some TV shows on or seen advertisements for. And that one costs $5 a month, not the paltry $3 a month that the CNN Plus costs. Let's see here. Psaki will also be a part of live streaming programs on MSNBC's cable networks as a voice on different shows, but she will not be hosting the 9 p.m. hour, replacing Rachel Maddow, which has been speculated. It's
also speculated that she might leave. Yes, shots fired. Because Rachel Maddow really had no followership after the Russian collusion thing fell apart. That was her entire show, was Russia collusion, every single show. But also there was some speculation that she might be replacing Joy Reid.
Oh, really? Well, I think it was rather obvious if you watched her press conferences recently. It's pretty obvious that she was about to fly away. You can literally see on her shirt here, she's growing wings. She is just primed to fly away.
Yeah. You can see in her eyes that she just wants to be anywhere but there.
Oh no, that's just that's the lizard skin covering over her eyes. Yeah,
exactly. The hologram is doing well. So when questioned about it, Psaki had this to say.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just Psaki being asked, "Why are you going to MSNBC?" Here's her response.
You know how I know she doesn't have a soul?
What's that?
You know how I know she doesn't have a soul?
How? The red hair?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Classic ginger joke is classic, but doesn't mean it's bad.
Is it ethical for you to continue conducting this job while negotiating with the media outlet?
Well, I have always gone over and above the stringent ethical and legal requirements of the Biden administration, and I take that very seriously. And as a standard for every employee of the White House, I have received rigorous ethics counseling, including as it relates to any future employment. I've complied with all ethics requirements and gone beyond and taken steps to recuse myself from decisions as appropriate.
The Biden ethics. The Biden ethics, Dyer.
The stringent Biden ethics. She's managed to follow all of them.
Wow. I just thought that she was corruptly trading on her position to get a job at MSNBC. I didn't realize she'd set her kids up with Ukrainian oligarchs to get corrupt energy deals and steal taxpayer money. My God.
God, I know she had kids working at Burisma.
Yeah, the Biden ethics.
Wow. That's not two words I usually would put in the same sentence unless it's a reference to how they don't have ethics. But yeah, maybe what she's doing makes perfect ethical sense for the elitist Democrats.
Yeah,
but not by any other measure of ethics.
Yeah, I just getting a job. I would be embarrassed to say I'm getting a job at MSNBC. She apparently doesn't see the complete lack of self-awareness to say, not just the White House ethics or the government ethics. It's the Biden administration ethics specifically. Wow, I don't know if that really has the currency that you think it does.
It's really easy to meet standards when the standards are set very, very low.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see here. So that was the update on various media plus streaming services this week. But however, not all is lost. You guys may have heard several Disney related issues this week. Disney particularly saying that they are actually coming for your kids, defending grooming policies, and also sneaking, not so subtly, a bunch of weird sex things into children's cartoons. We decided not to cover that in too much detail this week because everybody else has just covered it ad nauseum. But we did want to bring you some good news, which is that in response to all of that, in response to the fact that if you've got kids, you cannot leave them in front of Disney shows anymore because you just don't know what's going to happen, especially now that Disney has a stated goal of trying to inject sexualized content into children's shows. In response to that, the Daily Wire has announced this week that they are launching Daily Wire Kids, which is awesome. I'm
very excited about that, by the way, because I'm very concerned about what kind of shows that my kids, I have 4 kids, can watch that will be adding to their moral view of the world, helping structure what information they have available to them. Because there's a lot of things that TV shows can be done if done in moderation. You can introduce kids to new concepts and new ideas through television if you're not overusing it, but it only works if you have a good source.
Yes. So Daily Wire, in a press conference this week, they announced the launch of Daily Wire Kids and that they have committed $100 million to be invested over the next 3 years into this venture. They have reported they already have the writers of the classic and popular TV show VeggieTales on their staff, and they already have 2 children's shows in production, one of them about a family of chinchillas and the other about noodles that solve problems, which, as Ben Shapiro put it, are completely ridiculous show concepts. However, those are the kinds of shows that children like.
That is what kids watch.
It's completely ridiculous shows.
But they're educational, ridiculous shows.
Yeah. So if you have kids like Dyer does and are looking for a Disney alternative, you should definitely check out Daily Wire's new offering and see if it's right for you. So that's a good response to. I would imagine that the launch of Daily Wire Kids will be. I'll be curious to see how much more effective that is as compared to the CNN Plus launch.
Yeah,
I'm going to imagine quite a bit. So.
See, I think that there's a lot more people who are conservative who want to have something safe for their kids to watch than there are people who watch CNN.
Yeah. Well, and I think, too, is just we've talked about this a little bit before offline, is just a lot of children's content these days is kind of like algorithmically generated, just incomprehensible things. You were describing to me something crazy that your kids were watching a couple of weeks ago that was just like the plot had, like, there was no continuity in the plot from like minute to minute. It was just like continuous slapstick things and no understanding of building a narrative or anything like that. And that is just as bad for children to watch as LGBTQ injection woke CRT content that is presenting them concepts that they have no basis for. You just have this onslaught of either woke or nonsensical children's cartoons, which I think has led very much to the problems that the current generation has, where we grew up watching nonsense things that have no plot, that have no building of narrative or story arc or character development, and then all of a sudden we're a bunch of idiots that can't solve problems, don't understand how things interact with each other, have terrible social skills, and I think that's got a lot to do with the type of content that they've
the kind of show that I let my kids watch is I forgot the name of it, but basically it's a kid who has a bunch of toys, and they have a problem. Something happens that requires a solution, and the entire show is about him problem solving and investigating, trying to find what is the cause of the problem, and then crafting a solution to the problem that is best fits the people involved or toys involved. And they're like, oh, this is all about critical thinking. I love this show. Yeah,
there you go. So I guess we'll see if the Chinchillas show. You'll have to let us know how that goes.
I will definitely.
You can also review. So we'll force Dyer to review CNN Plus content, and then also make him watch Daily Wire Kids shows.
I think I'm getting less affected by the boredom of watching kids shows because I've done it so much now.
They're now Dyer's favorite shows. What's your favorite kids show, Dyer?
What
is the least annoying content that your children enjoy watching that you can endure watching alongside them?
So I love when they watch a lot of the old cartoon movies. If I can convince them to watch those, I liked when they watched the Zootopia. But as far as TV shows or Robin Hood, watching Princess, the Seven Dwarfs, what do you call it? Snow White.
Yes.
All the classics. I love that. But most of the time they spend they're watching like Peppa Pig or Wonder Why and stuff like that.
Oh,
in these fake British accents.
I feel like just on the principle that they are British, you shouldn't let your kids watch Peppa Pig. Yeah,
that's one of those shows that it was truly like random.
Or explain to them that they're filthy redcoats, not humans.
Think so.
They're actual swine. Yes,
swine.
That's what you need to do. Is if your kids are going to watch that, you need to explain to them that these are actual British people. British people are swine. They're redcoats filled.
I'll make sure I tell my kids that. Thanks. That will not cause any problems for me later.
Definitely not. Alrighty. Well, moving on to our next story here. We have the Joe Biden Doctrine. The Joe Biden Doctrine is simple. Destroy America. Now, that might sound a little hyperbolic, but that doesn't mean it's not happening. So, not to bury the lead here, on Thursday, Joe Biden announced that he was authorizing the release of 1 million barrels of oil per day, every day for the next 180 days from the Strategic Petroleum Oil Reserve. That would be 180 million barrels of oil over the next 6 months. Wow. In his speech, Biden said that this 180 million barrels would act as a, quote, wartime bridge until production ramps back up later this year. A wartime bridge. Are we at war? We actually are not at war, Dyer. That's crazy.
I feel like I would know if we were at war, but fairly sure we're not. Is there something Biden would like to share with the class about the fact that we're at war?
I think it'd be interesting. Maybe we can just stick him in front of a couple of people wearing uniforms, and apparently he just gives away all of his classified briefings to anybody wearing the uniform at any time, whether cameras are rolling or not. But last time we checked, officially, the U.S. is not at war, at least in Europe. But that's not stopping Joe Biden from using war to justify wartime policies here at home. And it's not just rhetoric. In his speech, Joe Biden also stated that he was going to be using the Defense Production Act, the War Powers Act, to secure materials to make batteries for electric vehicles and green energy storage.
That's insane. How is that going to support this non-existent war effort? Like, it's not like usually when you have to use the petroleum reserve, it's because if it's actually war related, it's because you have military vehicles in theater that are requiring fuel for the war effort. There is no military vehicles in any theater currently conducting war anywhere.
Yes. Or other times, if there's natural disasters that disrupt the oil supply. One of the more recent usages of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve before Joe Biden took office was one of the bigger ones was during Hurricane Katrina, where the pipelines were disrupted. However, the oil still existed, but it disrupted the supply chain, and the U.S. was able to borrow oil from the Strategic Reserve to provide literal liquidity to the oil supply chain and keep all the refineries filled with oil, continue to refine them until the Gulf pipelines could be fixed, at which point the Gulf pipelines were used to refill the Strategic Oil Reserve. And it basically was just this big swap, but it allowed the U.S. to kind of have this literal strategic reserve in the event of an emergency that we could borrow against and use to for some kind of emergency. Or as Dyer was pointing out, during a wartime, we actually did this for the first Gulf War, and we did it for the second Gulf War, as it's been termed, during the initial Iraqi invasion. We released tens of millions of barrels of oil from the reserve. Part of that was to pay for and to bolster the fuel lines over there for the military operations. So we've done this before for emergencies, for war. And Joe Biden is now using this war rhetoric to justify its usage in fighting the gas prices from his bad policies.
Yeah, and it's nice of him to pay lip service to ramping up production, but I'd be really curious if he's actually signed any new leases or that he's allowed any more permits to pump oil, because he said he wasn't going to do any. In fact, he was going to restrict those. So I get that releasing oil now kind of puts a Band-Aid on his mistake, but has he actually reversed the mistake in the first place?
No.
No.
He has not.
So the Defense Production Act and the Strategic Petroleum Reserve are both meant for ensuring national security during national emergencies and war. Despite Joe's best efforts, we are not at war with Russia, which leaves us with a national emergency as the only justification for these acts. What exactly is the national emergency that we are facing? Well, it would appear to be a Democrat policy plan. And be a Democrat policy plan, plain and simple. While Joe is citing the rising gas prices as a national emergency worth invoking war powers over, we all know that the rise in gas prices is directly related to the policies he has been trying to implement. Actually, plan seemed like a word that might have fit in the sentence until it was fully read.
Yeah, well, sorry. I fixed it while you were reading.
I appreciated it.
Yeah. So, but no, I mean, yeah. So if we're not really at war, then why release it? Well, because we're facing a national emergency, and I don't disagree that Democrat policy is itself a national emergency.
Yes. Biden's administration is a national emergency.
But that doesn't give them the right to use the oil that's not their oil. So, again, the two stories here again is the one that was really got a lot of traction was that we're releasing oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve at a just unprecedented rate. And a lot of people picked up on that, and that is a big deal. It's a huge deal. The thing that not a lot of people picked up on, though, is this use of the Defense Production Act to make batteries for electric vehicles. That's just bonkers. That's absolutely bonkers crazy that we are using. Joe Biden could not get the Green New Deal pushed through, and he's now literally declared war just to get these policies through. All of the things that they could have done with the Green New Deal that didn't pass, they're now utilizing the War Powers Act to just force it through.
These aren't batteries going into government vehicles or military vehicles. They're buying. They're taking tax dollars to buy, and they're also taking over facilities and require them to make a product that's going to be given to a civilian company that's going to be benefiting from this.
Well, and the civilian company is not the only one going to be benefiting from this, because an interesting side story here is that Jennifer Granholm, who is Joe's Secretary of Energy, is currently embroiled in multiple investigations over her multiple violations of the Stock Disclosures Act. According to her filings, which came in dramatically late, like 9 to 12 months late. She's supposed to report her stock transactions immediately, and she's reporting them 9 to 12 months late. Joe Biden's only been in office for 13 months. According to her filings, she has $1 million in stock for electric vehicle battery making companies. So there's companies that make batteries for electric vehicles. She owns millions of dollars of stock from these companies, which she reported late, which is a massive violation of the Stock Act. And now all of a sudden, Joe Biden has used the War Powers Act to buy batteries. Huh. That's just wild. This is currently a developing story, and is an addition to a story earlier last year where Jennifer Granholm was found to be trading pharmaceutical companies that contracted to create the COVID vaccine. So she was swapping back and forth Moderna and Pfizer and Remdesivir. What?
You know that Nancy Pelosi has $1 million in Tesla stock, right? And that Joe Biden owns 10% stock in an electric battery company, right?
Yeah. So why are they doing this? Well, because so this is actually like even, I don't know, as bad or if not worse than the military industrial complex. We'll all become unreasonably comfortable with the military industrial complex. However, now they've created this green energy war complex where they're all invested in green energy stuff, and because we couldn't, they thought for sure they were going to be able to force through the Green New Deal. I don't know why they thought they could do that, but they thought they were going to be able to do that. And so all of them loaded up on these green energy stocks. And then all of a sudden, nothing happens. They didn't pass the Green New Deal. And all of a sudden they're sitting there holding not worthless stock, but stock that didn't go up thousands of percent. I mean, my gosh, I mean, you and I would be happy with a 5% rise in our portfolio. That'd be real nice. They don't get up in the morning for less than 50%, if not hundreds of percent. So they're real pissed that they invested these millions of dollars, all of them, in green energy stuff, and nothing happened. So what do they do to fix it? Joe Biden's using the War Powers Act. That I don't know if I can convey with words. Derek, can you do any better than I can, other than just being indignatious about it? Like how crazy it is that they're going to be using the War Powers Act to buy batteries from companies that they all own stock in. I mean.
This is their retirement plan, man. They are not doing things that's in the best interest of the country. They're willing to sacrifice our national security. They're willing to use totalitarian powers that should only be used in extreme emergencies, like we are defending the homeland. They're willing to take control over private property and businesses to force the production of a product paid by taxpayer dollars, that will directly be enriching themselves. This is Biden and the Democrat elites' retirement plan. They know they're on the way out. They've played their final card. The red wave is coming, but they are setting in motion the things they need to do to make sure that they remain extremely wealthy and their family remains extremely wealthy far into the future.
Well, and they're tipping back and forth between communism and fascism here, because fascism is supposed to be the lucrative merger of corporation and state, and communism is supposed to be the takeover of corporation and state. And I think it really goes towards proving horseshoe theory, where they're really pretty much at the same edge of that almost circle there, because there's not much difference between taking it over and then, using the War Powers Act to force companies to do things. As reluctant as I am to draw the comparison, somebody else in history also forced companies to do certain things that were financially beneficial to him and his party in the recent past. And, that ended pretty badly for all of Europe twice. But the level of corruption here is beyond. I mean, this is, I don't even know if it's treason anymore, but it's certainly something. It's got to be absolutely illegal.
Calling it corruption is not enough. And the thing is, the reason why those two different belief systems they kind of converge with their actions is they don't actually believe any of the belief systems. The only thing that matters to them is self-interest.
Money and power. There is no truth but power.
The consolidation of their power, the consolidation of their wealth. If you look at what Biden has said, he has taken the extremes on basically every topic during his career, because he doesn't believe anything. He's a political chameleon who is just there trying to build his wealth and power.
Yep.
He's done an amazing job, and we've let him. How embarrassing is that Americans have let him do this and has been no consequence?
Yeah. So this is this is what democracy looks like, is you try to pass a bill that will corruptly enrich you and your family and your party. And when that fails, you just use the War Powers Act, which the War Powers Act is necessarily dictatorial power. It is a way to allow the president to assume direct control over various parts of the economy in a time of emergency, in a time of war. We're not in a war right now. We're not in a time of emergency beyond the emergency that was created by the election of Joe Biden and his policies that he's implementing. But those are not emergencies worth utilizing the awesome, and by awesome I mean the traditional, the biblical sense of it, the fearsome sense of the power, this awesome power that is the War Powers Act that allows the president direct dictatorial control over sectors of the economy. The War Powers Act, in my opinion, is necessary. However, it is not constitutional. If it was constitutional, it would be in the Constitution. The founding fathers were well aware of the various things that might happen during a war, especially during an invasion. They were very aware of what would happen during an invasion. And even then, they didn't see it necessary to give the president power over the economy in that way. They didn't that didn't come into play until the last century. This is a relatively new thing. It's unconstitutional. And even though it's unconstitutional, I still see the need for it. I still understand its purpose. However, Joe Biden and the Democrats are a perfect reason why. That is why the founding fathers never put that into the Constitution, because they knew people like them would rise to power and utilize it in a corrupt way. And so even though I can see the need for it, I have to go with the founding fathers on this one that, yeah, even if it is necessary, even if it would keep America safer if used in the correct way, it's just impossible to trust anybody to use it in the right way, and we can't have it. So it's got to go.
Look what Trump did. There was a similar situation where a lot of products need to be created to support the COVID response. Whether you think it was overreaction or not, they still had companies that switched over from what they were producing before to producing new medical things that were in short supply because China cut us off. And you know how Trump did it?
Yeah,
did he force them, or did he just ask them nicely and negotiate?
He asked them, and he created economic incentives using government cash as kind of carrots, dangling it in front of them. He created economic incentive, and the companies switched over their production on their own. He didn't have to use the War Powers Act.
Were other options. You don't have to go with the totalitarian option every fucking time.
And to that point too, Dyer, is at the time the Democrats kept accosting him that he wasn't using the War Powers Act, and he kept saying, I don't need to. They're doing it without me. What else would I make them do? They're already doing what we want them to do. There's no reason to use the War Powers Act. And it was widely speculated at the time that the Democrats were trying to goad him into using the War Powers Act so that it would create a precedent that you could use it on non-war things. And I would say COVID was a pretty goddamn big emergency. A lot of it was self-inflicted, but it was a big deal. And if there was ever a time for a non-wartime emergency, I would say that was the time to use the Defense Production Act. However, we didn't need to. And had Trump been goaded into using it, they would have just been able to say, oh, well, it's not weird for Joe to use the War Powers Act because Trump was the one who set the precedent that you could use it on frivolous things. But Trump didn't do that. However, they're going to go forward with it anyway. So, that is just showing. You can kind of see what their plans are a couple of years in advance. But even though they didn't set up the smoke screen of like, oh, well, Trump did it first, they're still going to go ahead and do it themselves and use it on frivolous things. And by God, the self-inflicted gasoline crisis is nowhere even close to as bad as the self-inflicted COVID crisis. And so again, I don't see if you didn't need it for COVID, I don't see any reason to do it for whatever this is. And buying batteries, how on earth is that going to help anybody? That's not actually going to affect the price.
Have you seen lithium mines?
Yeah.
How are you helping the green energy, the climate change activism has been a gigantic boondoggle trying to convince the international community to pour money into the pockets of a few activists. It's all been about a money-making venture for those activists and for those politicians that support it. Has nothing to do with actually helping the environment. Their policies, they say, that are solutions to pollution often involve more pollution.
Yeah, the War Powers Act for COVID, which they didn't end up having to use it, but they wanted to use it on creating PPE, personal protective equipment, and the vaccine test, or the COVID test, which would have been used for the common person. The common person would have had access to those things in the supply chain. Now they want to use it to build electric car batteries. On the lowest end electric car is $35,000, where the average price is $75,000. These are not products accessible to the majority of Americans. You need to be in the 10%, maybe even the 5%, to have access to these products, because you just literally can't afford them. And good luck trying to get it financed in the current financial, environment. And so this is absolutely insane, this idea that you would use the Defense Production Act, the War Powers Act, in a non-time of war to bolster the supply of luxury products for the 5%. I mean,
I actually support the idea of there being a constitutional amendment where they were to establish a very, very strict scenario, which the War Powers Act could be used. If the states could agree on it, I would support it. I don't like it just being a policy or a law passed because it.
I think you should devolve it to the states. I think you should devolve it to the states. If they want to have the War Powers Act, it should be devolved down to the governors, and the governors
right
only
now
have
that's
power.
where it's at.
Yeah, they only have power over the states.
Right now, that is where the authority would actually lay, because it wasn't said in the Constitution who has the power, so it would go down to the states. But if you wanted to have a convention of states and make it a federal law or part of the Constitution, then I would support it if it was extremely clear it could only be used when there was a wartime style threat that really risked the destruction of the country, that required that those kind of powers be established, because this is not an example. It has to be extremely clear. This could never happen under the definition, because this is a misuse of power.
Yeah. I think that it would be perfectly appropriate that if you want to, as the federal executive, if you want to take the country to war or utilize war powers, you can only do that with the consent of the executives of each of the 50 states. And if only some of the states want to join in, that's fine. But that is, you can't just have, we're not supposed to be this dictatorship where the executive had full control over the day-to-day financial interactions of the states. That's not anywhere close to what this was meant to be. And while it may be necessary, there's certainly other ways to do it that don't allow them this open door to just do it whenever their stock portfolio is dipping. So I'm sure we could go on with that forever. And I think I do have some more later on about possible ways of revising the War Powers Act and the Strategic Oil Reserve.
Right. So back to me then, right?
Yes.
So how exactly bad is this?
Yeah. How bad is it to release 180 million barrels? It's pretty bad.
Yeah, how bad is that? So Joe, who already released 50 million barrels last December, is planning to release another 180 million barrels, which is at least double and possibly triple the highest ever before released from the oil reserves. It will drop our reserve stock by a third. And for what? Well, the easy math is that America uses 20 million barrels a day. So this will pad us out 5% per day for the next 6 months. That translates to translating to any kind of real savings at the pump is unlikely. Yeah. So you're probably not going to see more than a few pennies for a short amount of time, if anything.
Yeah. And in the meantime, we're going to draw down our reserves by a third for essentially no benefit. So why do it? Why do it at all? Well, one look at Joe Biden's approval numbers and a look at the projections for Democrat House seats at the midterms, and it really starts making sense. Speaking of midterms, Dyer, when are the midterms exactly?
About 7 months from now, but really only 6 months in many places with early mail-in voting.
Oh, and so 6 months. How long did Joe say he was going to be plundering oil from the reserve to lower gas prices for?
6 months.
Huh. That's so weird that those seem to line up exactly.
Huh.
That's very strange.
Are you telling me that it's only a cynical political move and that it actually has nothing to do with what's best for the country?
Yes, I'm saying that exactly, that the Democrat Party has seized control of the oil reserve. Yeah, and is now just dumping America's strategic reserves just to bolster their numbers at the midterms. That's exactly what I'm saying.
They're laughing in our faces.
So there you have it, folks. We thought that the Strategic Oil Reserve was for U.S. national security, but as it turns out, it's just for Democrat midterm security. And a little map break, which I've got up on the screen right now, makes it all make a lot more sense. You got up at the top here a map of the U.S. from AAA, which is a gas price increase by state for the last couple of months. And below that, you've got the 2020 electoral map. And you'll notice it's not perfect, but there's a very, very high correlation between the states with the highest gas prices and the states that voted for Joe Biden. So this, to the extent that everybody's gas is increasing, you'll notice that if you're in a red state, your gas is annoyingly increased, but it's by no means extreme. Not yet. This is not right now. This is not. I'm in a very red state, and the gas prices are very high. They're close to the highest I've ever seen, but they're actually not higher than what I've ever seen before yet. So it's bad, but it's not the worst ever. However, you got places like California, which have seen gas prices at like $7.30, hitting up closer to $8 a gallon. You got the same story in New York, same story in Illinois. So there seems to be, as painful as it is for everybody, the most pain is in the blue states. And so the cynical emergency declaration that gas prices are an emergency, well, to the extent that they're an emergency, it's only an emergency in blue states. And so, again, why does Biden need to lower these gas prices? Well, because his voting base is feeling pain. They don't like it. He doesn't want his constituents to see, oh, I'm paying $9 a gallon and there's a little sticker on my pump that says I did that next to Joe Biden's face. He wants the story to be, well, I released all this strategic oil, so I'm doing my part. If gas prices are still high, then it's definitely the oil company's fault. That's what's going to happen is, mark my words, a couple of months from now, maybe even as close as next month, there will be a press conference where Joe Biden says, he'll be asked, you released all this oil, why are gas prices still high? And he will double down that they're only high because of the oil companies, I guess, withholding oil from the country, because that's how making products work. So once again, Democrats plundering national reserves is nothing new, but it usually happens with budgets. Usually they plunder national reserves in their budgeting through like the legislature. It's more of a legal mechanism. They do this like they'll borrow against the Social Security fund, or they'll borrow against the VA fund, or they'll borrow against all of these quote unquote savings plans and fill them up with IOUs and then never pay it back. That's been going on for years at this point, for decades at this point. But this way of kind of streamlining the stealing, the theft of our national reserves by just directly, by executive fiat, taking oil out of the oil reserves and directly spending it on blue states to lower their gas prices for 6 months when the midterms are 6 months away. That is beyond absurd. And again, that is the Joe Biden doctrine. It is to destroy America specifically for his political and financial gain, nothing else. Joe Biden's an evil man for doing this. I mean, I wish that more time was being spent on this policy and breaking it down in the way that we're doing. And I wish that we even had more time to break it down in the way that we're doing, because the implications of using the strategic oil reserve in this way are that America is essentially over. America is essentially over at this point.
Do you remember when the Biden administration held back COVID, life-saving COVID medications from Florida?
Yeah, they nationalized the supply chain for remdesivir, which is the monoclonal antibodies. They bought by force all of the supply, even though Florida was buying its own supply of monoclonal antibodies, and they had set up around the state injection sites for monoclonal antibodies, and it was working well for them. Other states were also buying it on the open market. And then Joe Biden stepped in and they nationalized the product. The government purchased every drop of monoclonal antibodies and then resold it back to the states, but in certain quota volumes, which had the effect of reducing Florida's supply from 70,000 doses a week to 30,000 doses a week, just because he didn't like that they were buying on the open market and that it was working as well as the vaccine for some people. And so, yeah, they will do anything, because it wouldn't be good if all of a sudden Florida's death numbers dropped dramatically because DeSantis opened these life-saving monoclonal antibody sites. Joe Biden would much rather steal those monoclonal antibodies from Florida and allow those Floridians to die just so that DeSantis doesn't look good. Everything Joe does is cynical, and it's cynical to the point of evil. Cynical to the point of evil, wanting people to die because otherwise it would just not look good for him.
And you remember that money that was going towards farms and businesses that were affected by the government
I
COVID
think you
policies
mean
going towards
just black people affected by
black
COVID.
people. Yeah.
Yes.
So we have not only a administration who's willing to sacrifice our national security for a little short-term gain to reduce the cost of oil in Democrat states to help with elections, which sounds like an in-kind investment into election campaigns. I don't know. It sounds kind of like it would be illegal to me. But not only that, but he's also coming from an administration that's willing to divert supplies to benefit directly to constituencies that they think they want to support. Kind of makes me concerned that the dispersion of the oil might not be equal.
Yeah, and I would love to see I would love to see some accounting and some tracking on where all 180 million barrels are going, because I guarantee you that they will go to refineries that are primarily shipping to blue states. I almost guarantee it, because those will be the ones that are having the most price decrease. So it doesn't do Joe any good to, like I said, my gas has probably increased by about $1, which is a lot, and that would be in the last say 16 months. About $1. That's a lot. But that's nowhere near as high as California, that's increased by like $3 or $4. New York, that's increased by $3. Chicago, that's increased by $2. So it doesn't do a lot to lower the national average to lower my gas 50 cents. It does a lot to the national average to lower California by $2, but to lower New York by $3, to lower Chicago by $1.50. It makes a much bigger impact to do that. And so if Joe Biden wants to make it look like he's lowering gas prices, he's going to focus on the highest ones first. And, us who are in flyover country, we're going to be, we still have high gas prices, but we're not going to see any benefit from that because it's not really beneficial to lower our gas prices. We're not going to really drag down the average as much.
A lot of the stuff we just talked about wasn't in the script. And it's funny how easy it is to think of so many different ways that the Biden administration has acted completely evilly towards the American people.
Well, there's a reason why you've never seen this before. There's a reason why you've never seen just the direct withdrawal from the national oil reserves directly into the country's oil supply. You've never seen it like this just for purely political reasons, because it's so easy to understand, wow, that's really corrupt to do that. And most people wouldn't be willing to do that. However, Joe has no scruples and no media watchdogs right now. So he's able to just do it without any consequences.
Must be nice to have no conscience whatsoever, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, so with such an unprecedented release of oil, there are some other questions to be asked here too. Like, is any of this oil going to be put into the international market? Is any of the oil going to be given as aid to other countries? How much of this oil will fuel planes and buses full of illegals? And when are we planning to restock the supply, if at all? Maybe he'll do what Obama did to the FEMA supply and just leave it empty, right? That last one is of particular note because, as you'll remember, at the beginning of COVID, there was a massive shortage of gloves, masks, because Obama administration used the strategic medical stockpiles and never refilled them.
Yeah. So, the Democrats, they're really good at borrowing. They're not so good at paying back. Here's another question, Dyer. I want you to really noodle on this one. Who paid to fill the strategic oil reserves with oil in the first place? Who bought that oil?
Well, that'd have to be the taxpayer.
Yeah, that would be the taxpayer, wouldn't it? And who is the Biden administration selling the strategic oil reserve oil to? Who are they selling that to?
Oh, that'd be he's selling it to the taxpayers.
Yeah, so you, the American taxpayer, you already paid for that oil to fill up the strategic oil reserve. Now Joe Biden's taking it out of the oil reserve and selling it to you again. You bought it twice. You already bought this oil, and they're going to sell it to you again.
Gasoline's already expensive. Buying it twice is not making it better.
Yeah, so now you're going to pay for this twice, and I think that this just means that taxation's literally theft. If you're going to take money from somebody and buy a product and then sell that product to them again. They already paid for it. That's just theft. That's just theft, pure and simple. The government has completely lost its mandate for existence at this point. And we've got some more stories coming up here. They aren't securing us internationally against foreign threats at all anymore. They're not securing us against internal threats at all anymore. And they're just plundering all of your money and resources and then selling it back to you at twice the cost. The average cost of a barrel of oil in the Strategic Oil Reserve right now was $29 a barrel. The cost of oil right now is like $150 a barrel, or $150 a barrel. So they're going to sell it back to you at like 5 times the cost that you bought it for. To the extent that we ever use oil out of the Strategic Oil Reserve, it should be free to the American public. You already paid for it. It's for emergencies. In an emergency situation, you probably don't have money to buy it. When we had the PPE crisis, that was given out to hospitals for free. It was available. I mean, it was delegated under certain quota amounts, but it was given out for free. The hospitals didn't have to purchase it from the stockpiles. The American people already paid for it. Same thing with FEMA. When FEMA goes to a hurricane or a tornado or some kind of natural disaster site, and they're bringing water and soap and food and whatever, medical supplies, they're giving it out for free. They're not charging you for it. It's for free. You already paid for it. You paid for it as an insurance policy against some kind of disaster. And you get it for free when that disaster happens because you don't have money or resources. That's the nature of a disaster. If you already had money and resources, you wouldn't need to have it provided to you by FEMA. And so we've actually seen this previous usages of the Strategic Oil Reserve, other than the Biden administration, which already just gave out 50 billion barrels before Christmas. We've never seen the Strategic Oil Reserve be tapped into at this rate for gas price hikes. We've never seen this before. Previous usages out of the Strategic Oil Reserve were to, they would sell a couple million barrels to fund the expansion of the Strategic Oil Reserve. That's happened several times where they'll sell out a couple million barrels and they'll use the proceeds to build more tanks, which is great. That's a great idea. We've seen during Katrina when the oil pipelines from the Gulf were disrupted and the refineries were going dry because they didn't have any oil in them. And we knew that eventually we would fix the Gulf Coast oil pipeline. So what we did was we borrowed oil out of the Strategic Reserve to keep the refineries chugging so that they would keep producing gas and the other things that they produce, which is great. And then as soon as we fixed the Gulf Shore lines, we pumped that oil back into the Strategic Reserve and paid back the balance. But we basically used it as a literal liquidity pool to help us bridge the gap of a disaster. And that was a perfectly acceptable use of it. We also used it during the first Gulf War and the second Iraqi invasion. We sold off 30-40 billion barrels to bolster the war fund and also provide gasoline and diesel for the military equipment over there. And those are all relatively acceptable uses for it. The idea that we're just going to be giving out 230 million barrels of oil in under a year. By the time that Joe Biden's done with this 180 million barrel release, if you include the 50 million from December, he will in 12 months, over the course of 12 months, have given out 230 million barrels of oil. That is just, and purely to bolster his political numbers, for no other reason than to just cynically bolster his political approval rating. That is insane.
Very much so.
And you have to buy it all again because you already paid for it, but now you get to buy it all over again. Great. All right, so
next story.
Yeah, so not content with destroying America's strategic reserves, Joe Biden is also destroying our entire system of leverage internationally. America, our international power comes through being able to leverage our economy and our culture and our military might against other countries. And Joe Biden is doing everything he can to undermine those points of leverage. So In the past 5 weeks, Joe Biden has pulled out just about every Western finance lever he could use, or he's pulled just about every Western finance lever that he could use to get Russia to heel. And essentially, that has had zero effect. Every lever he pulled, every bit of influence he tried to wield against Russia has been a failure. For generations now, America has had a deal with the devil, better known as the Federal Reserve Bank. The trade-off has been very simple. We give total control of the financial system to the central banks, and in return, they would keep Europe's balls in a vice so tight that even Bruce Jenner would cringe. The way that they would do this is by burying Europe under layer after layer of Western financial system. And that is the way they are able to get and maintain control over Europe. And we've been expanding that out to every other country in the world that we can get our grubby little paws on. So after back-to-back world wars, this seemed like a deeply desirable outcome. Let's make it so that Europe can't go to worldwide war again, because they keep doing that over and over again, and it keeps causing us problems. So it was desirable at the time to find some way of leveraging U.S. influence over them to make sure that they don't do that again. And after Europe had just absolutely decimated their manufacturing sector for the second time in 50 years, we had an excellent opportunity to do that for them. So now, now in the modern day, you have to pay, 6 times what your grandparents did to buy a house. 30% interest credit cards, they're pretty annoying. And 6-figure student loan debt is rather suffocating. And it's a little unfair that the politicians and Wall Street giants get to make billions of dollars out of essentially nothing. But the trade-off is, for all of those things, all those detriments, the trade-off is that it's supposed to be impossible for Europe to ever go to war again. It's supposed to be impossible. So all of those detriments, but the trade-off is no more world wars. That's what we were told. And how is that possible? Well, how could Europe go to war without the express permission of the US if they can't pay for that war? All of their finances are riding on U.S. financial systems, backed by U.S.-controlled central banks. So how could Europe possibly go to war? How could the rest of the world possibly go to war if all of their money to pay for that war is riding on U.S. and Western financial systems? How could they do that? We could just pull those out, and then all of a sudden they can't pay for anything, right? Right.
And in the past 6 weeks, all that safety has essentially come crashing down. As soon as Russia stepped out of line, Joe issued sanctions and threatened to remove them from the SWIFT payment system that was supposed to make it impossible for them to sell their oil, buy food and war supplies from the West, and affect misery across their population that now couldn't pay for their OnlyFans subscriptions.
How terrible.
What a tragedy. This was supposed to be the big stick that kept us all safe. And what did Putin have to say about it?
Well, he essentially told Joe, do it. See if I care. And Joe did do it. Joe pulled that big financial lever of ripping Russia out of the SWIFT payment network, which allows them to sell all of their things and buy all of their things from international trade. Without the SWIFT payment network, how could Russia possibly participate in international trade? And without international trade, how could Russia possibly go to war with anybody? It would be just impossible. And remember, all of those things that I just mentioned, all of those trade-offs that you've had to endure, our generation, just total economic desert, just impossible to maintain any assets, impossible to generate wealth, impossible, just burdened with all of this debt and ridiculous credit card fees. All of that has been for the express purpose we gave control of the financial system to the central banks, and they were supposed to make war impossible by making it impossible to engage in international trade if you go to war. And so what happened? Well, Joe Biden, we kicked them off the SWIFT payment network. Joe Biden sanctioned all of their trade, took away their McDonald's, and did that stop Russia from going to war? Well, taking a look at the Russian ruble to the US dollar exchange rate, which I've got up on the screen here, in a word, no. All of that effort, all of that trade-off had essentially zero impact. We can see on this graph, it starts dipping down towards the end of February, which is the week that Putin invaded Ukraine, and we see it dipped pretty substantially. It went from around 1.3 cents per ruble, so 1.3 US dollars equals, 1.3 US cents equals 1 ruble, and we had it dip all the way down to an eighth of a penny. So it lost almost half of its value, And you'll remember a few weeks ago, Joe Biden in a speech talking about how much they decimated the ruble, just total decimation. And then you look at towards the end of the graph here, which ended on Friday, and where's the ruble at again? Oh, it bounced back up almost completely. So for about 3 or 4 weeks, we were able to cut about 40% of the ruble's value, and then it bounced right back up. And what did it cost us? All it cost us was all of those things I mentioned, just generation after generation of giving all of our financial control over to the central banks, and them creating all of these international consortiums and super government agencies and all of this stuff, all of that. And Joe Biden pulls the biggest financial lever in history, and all it cost us was all of those things. And then it had the impact of dropping the ruble for 3 weeks. Wow, that was so worth it. What were some of the other costs that we had? Well, Joe Biden had this to say a couple of days ago about some of the costs that we're going to be incurring due to his pulling of this giant financial lever. I guess we'll kind of continue to see if it was worth it or not.
With regard to food shortage, yes, we did talk about food shortages. And it's going to be real. The price of these sanctions is not just imposed upon Russia. It's imposed upon an awful lot of countries as well, including European countries and our country as well.
So food shortages, tremendous cost, food shortages, all of this imposed on us. And again, what was the trade-off? We got the ruble to drop for about 3 weeks before it bounced back. And then the cost of that is going to be food shortages for the next several years. Wow. That was, man, I mean, I remember Trump talking about the art of the deal. And, this is a really, really good deal. This is such a good deal. Russia, they get a couple of financial headaches for a few weeks, and then we get food shortages for years. Wow.
Yeah. So for generations, we've lived with the fiat financial system, outrageous inflation, evaporating middle class, the creation of new American oligarchs with banks too big to fail, and CEOs that afford to go to space while you can barely afford to drive to work. All of that trade-off, and for what? We got to hurt the ruble for a few weeks. And in return, are going to have food shortages for potentially years. Great job, Joe. That was a terrible trade-off.
Well, don't sound so excited, Dyer. I mean, come on. Food shortages. It's so exciting. We got to hurt the ruble. It dipped 40%, Dyer.
This is the difference between a American first, administration and a America last and me first administration.
And for anybody out there who trades or is at least a spectator of crypto, dipping 40% for 3 weeks and bouncing back up, that is nothing. That is nothing. This is
first time.
Yeah. This was nothing. This is absolutely meaningless. Completely meaningless. What's that?
Hangman meme where the guys turn the other guy on.
Yeah, first time. Yeah. I mean, Bitcoin dipped and rebounded 60% like 5 times in the last year. Very stable asset. So the ruble recovery isn't even the end of the story. So the ruble seems to have gotten back up to about 90% of where it was. But that's not the end of the story. As Europe, as Trump pointed out 4 years ago, has idiotically, perhaps criminally, negligently become absolutely addicted and reliant on Russian energy to the point where people will literally freeze to death in Europe if they don't get Russian energy. They have nowhere else to get it. And so sanction the Russians all you want, but it doesn't make Europe any less freezing in the winter. And knowing this, this week Russia called Europe's bluff. Sanctions or not, Europe needs Russian energy. And so this week Russia announced that Europe will need to buy that energy in rubles. They will no longer be accepting euros as payment for gas supplies. If Europe wants to be able to turn on their heaters, especially Germany, if they want to turn their heaters on in the winter, you got to pay for it in rubles. You can't pay for it in euros anymore. And this will have the effect of creating massive demand for rubles in a way that Russia's not seen in perhaps the entire lifetime of the ruble. And what happens when you have high demand for something, Dyer?
The price goes up.
The price goes up. So the ruble's already recovered without that. What do you think is going to happen to the ruble with the requirement that you now have to buy all Russian energy in rubles?
It's going to go up in value.
It's going to keep going up. So again, we pulled this giant lever, and over the course of 3 weeks it dipped. Over the course of 5 weeks it recovered, and I'm going to guess that over the course of about 8 weeks you're going to see it be higher than it was before. My projection is that 2 weeks from now the ruble is going to be higher than it was before they invaded Ukraine. That's what we'll see if we actually hit that, but that's my projection, is that Joe Biden's policy and the financial establishment trade-off for the last 50 years, that has all been such a failure that in 2 weeks we'll see the ruble having been higher than it was before we tried to leverage against them.
Yep. So in another move, so unmired from the Western financial system, the Russian central bank is moving to buy gold, lots of it. Looking at most of any Western financial news media this week, and you will see the story of how Russia's banks are selling gold as fast as they can move it. What those stories are leaving out is that the Russian central bank is the buyer of the gold, exchanging it for a fixed rate of rubles, which has led to speculation that Russia may be moving to a goldenized, the goldenizing of the ruble, making it backed by gold, and exchangeable for gold. Why would they want to do this? Well, there are a lot of complicated financial reasons to do it, but the most important one being that you can't really sanction gold.
Yeah, you can tell Russia all you want, oh, you can't trade rubles. That's fine. That's fine. If you just want to send gold over instead. So imagine this. We already have this week Russia saying Europe can't buy energy in euros anymore. They have to buy it in rubles. What if a couple of months from now they say, yeah, well, rubles aren't good enough because you guys keep sanctioning them, so why don't you buy it in gold? You got to send us actual gold to get it. They could do that.
And freaking tastic.
Yeah. So in less than 2 months, Russia has been able to unshackle itself from the control of Western finance. Again, all of that financial leverage that only exists so long as Russia is on Western financial systems. As soon as we ejected them from SWIFT, we lost all of that leverage. What a great way to use your leverage is just by getting rid of it. I mean, wow, man. They tell you guys that finance is really complicated. And, it's really hard for the common person to really understand why they're making some of these decisions. And then you look at stuff like this, like, oh, I think it makes sense to everybody that if you have Russia or a foreign adversary utilizing a Western payment network, that you have some kind of leverage over it, right? And then you, as a dumb dolt, you might think that, maybe you could use it by changing their interest rates or by forcing them to do this or that. You wouldn't think that the way to utilize that leverage is by just giving it up, right?
You wouldn't think so, no.
Yeah. So, due to the complete idiocy of our ruling class, it seems so in the last 2 months, Russia's been able to unshackle itself from complete control of Western finance, and they've now created officially the petro ruble, where they're able to exchange their oil and natural gas for rubles instead of US dollars or euros. Due to the complete idiocy of our ruling class, it seems possible that they could make the golden petro ruble in the near future. Not just the petro ruble, but the golden petro ruble. That'll be something. At which point, America will have completely lost all of our leverage over Russia, all of our financial leverage over Russia, leaving only one leverage option left: war. We have completely given up every financial and political lever of power against Russia, and the only one left would be war.
And that is exactly their goal, is
Exactly.
to remove themselves from our influence and our influence over the countries around them that can affect their economy. This is absolutely a logical move for them to make, but it has only been a miscalculation that our ruling class was willing to sacrifice so much to gain nothing, essentially.
Yeah, the promise of globalism, the promise of centralized banking and fiat currency was it would allow us to have political and financial leverage over every adversary, and that war would become irrelevant. Well, in the last couple of weeks here, they've essentially created the irrelevancy of the financial leverage, and the political leverage has been irrelevant for a long time. And so now we're back to just war. So again, we sacrificed for generations all of this control, made all of these sacrifices so that we could have this world where Western influence was dominant. And Joe Biden pissed it all away over the course of about 3 weeks. What a great job. What a great job. I mean, he's not even dumping the oil that fast. I mean, this is like the equivalent of saying like, oh, well, the Middle East, they've got leverage over us because they produce our oil. So to get rid of that leverage, we're just going to dump it on the ground. Okay.
Like pouring out Russian vodka. You're not hurting them. You already bought it. You're only hurting yourself. Now you don't have vodka.
Yes. Alrighty. So our next story is also about Joe Biden selling out the country.
We have a theme going on,
it's just Joe Biden selling out the country. Oh, wow, that's crazy. All right. So there was a couple new leaked phone calls, not just transcripts that were interpreted by Vindman, but real actual recordings of Joe Biden speaking actually rather coherently. And these recordings, one of the kind of unmentioned things in these recordings is, as bad as they do show the decline of Joe Biden, that like he actually could speak. I mean, he was speaking corruption, but he could speak very well, even a couple of years ago. So these recordings are multiple. They represent multiple phone calls between former Vice President Joe Biden and former Ukrainian President something Poroshenko in 2016, right before and slightly after Trump was elected, but before he took office. Petro Poroshenko. Alliteration. Great. Let's see here. So these recordings show damning evidence that Joe Biden was clearly trying to hide his dirty dealings with Ukraine. As we went over last week and several weeks before, Joe Biden has had a lot of things going on in Ukraine, most notably Burisma. However, more recently we found out about Metabiota and all of the Defense Department money that was being swept up by both companies and deposited into Hunter Biden and Joe Biden's pockets. So there was a lot of things that Joe Biden needed to hide after it was clear Trump had won the election. And these tapes show, I don't know if it's appear to show, they seem to overtly show Joe Biden attempting to cover up those activities. Let's listen. Why don't you read through like what we're listening while I find the timestamps here?
Okay, so the first one is going to be just a further verification that Biden had the prosecutor that was investigating his son working at Burisma, having Victor Shogun, the prosecutor, fired. Now, if you remember like him bragging on video about how he was withholding the $1 billion from of support to Ukraine, tax dollars that were already determined by Congress to be going towards Ukraine, and that Biden really has no authority to not give, he was withholding that money and saying, you will fire this prosecutor, subtext, that's investigating my son, or you will not get the money.
Now, Joe Biden justified
son of a bitch.
Yeah.
6 hours later.
Joe Biden justified this publicly by saying that prosecutor was corrupt. However, the Ukrainian president, Petro Poroshenko, had something else to say about that.
Yeah, this is the conversation that happened that Biden was referring to.
I have a second positive news for you. Yesterday, I met with the General Prosecutor Shokin. Yes. And despite of the fact that we didn't have any corruption charges, we don't have any information about he doing something wrong, I especially asked him, no, it was the day before yesterday, I especially asked him to resign as his position as a state person, and despite of the fact that he has a support in the parliament. And as a finish of my meeting with him, he promised me to give me the statement on resignation. And 1 hour ago, he bring me the written statement of his resignation.
Great.
And this is my second step for keeping my promises.
I agree.
So what promises to who? Why would it be in the American people's interest to have the Ukrainian president fire a investigator who has no evidence of his wrongdoing?
It's a good question.
What and promises to who? Promises to Joe?
Yes.
It's why was Joe asking for those promises? Is he authorized to ask for those promises?
Probably not. But even if he comes up with a reason later on for why there's a national interest in the prosecutor being fired without any evidence, it could just be a engineering of an excuse to cover up his actual purpose, right? Though I can't think of a single logical argument for why that prosecutor was corrupt or should have been fired, or why America would care. Why is that?
Well, I mean, I think the American people really want Joe and his family to steal as much of our tax dollars as quickly and efficiently as possible. So I think that's what the benefit for the American people is, that Joe's family is enriching itself. I think that's something that we all desperately want and desire, and that's why 87 million people voted for Joe Biden a year and a half ago.
I think we have a vastly different understanding of America.
You're probably right. So our next clip here, we're skipping around here. This, if you guys can see the timestamp here, we got 17 minutes and 18 seconds of recordings here, all from Joe Biden's conversations with former president of Ukraine, discussing the various cover-ups and corrupt activity that Joe was doing over there and trying to cover it up before Trump gets into office. We encourage you guys to watch this on your own time. We unfortunately can't play all 17 and comment on all 17 minutes of it here on the show, so we're going to skip around to different segments that Dyer found particularly fascinating.
Yeah, and if you guys are concerned that this doesn't sound like Biden is talking enough for it to be like a real clip, like if you can listen to the entire conversation, and it's extremely clear that it is Biden.
Yes.
And it's being recorded on Poroshenko's side of the conversation.
As usual, when I hear your voice. Thank you very much.
Well, you are doing very well. Congratulations on getting the new prosecutor general. I know there's a lot more that has to be done, but I really think that's good, and I understand you're working with a rod in the coming days on a number of additional laws to secure the IMF. But congratulations on installing the new prosecutor general. It's going to be critical for him to work quickly to repair the damage Shokin did. And I'm a man of my word. And that now that the new prosecutor general is in place, we're ready to move forward in signing that new $1 billion loan guarantee. And I don't know how you want to go about that. I'm not going to be able to get to Kyiv anytime soon. Meaning the next month or so, and I don't know whether you could either sign it with our ambassador, or if you came here, we could sign it, or if you want, we're inviting Groisman here later. I'm going to be talking to him later this morning. Not for that purpose. We're inviting him to Washington, and so I'll leave it up to you as to how you want that done and when you want it done.
Yep. So we more discussions about firing that prosecutor that was looking into Burisma. The damage, as Poroshenko just said, there wasn't any evidence of him doing anything wrong, and then Joe Biden counters with, it's good that we're going to get a new prosecutor in there to repair all the damage that he'd done.
You know what the left-wing news sources' defense of this was?
Of the recording, or of
this particular part of the recording?
What was
which is what the only thing they would respond to actually was they were saying, this is exactly what Biden said he did. So it corresponds with his previous comments about the conversation. So nothing to see here.
Yep.
Well, yeah, his previous comments were also bad.
Well, but him saying something that jives with his previous corruption, that makes it okay, right?
No.
I totally misunderstood this situation. Let's hear.
Worst non-defense ever.
Yeah. So, let's hear. So they also, with the clip that we're about to play, will be Joe Biden describing an American quote-unquote prosecutor that will be assigned to oversee the Ukrainian head prosecutor. Now, this American prosecutor is likely to be on the dole in the same way that Ukrainian ambassador Yovanovitch and who is that army dork? Do you know who I'm talking about?
Oh,
was it Vidinsky or something, or
no, God damn it! I know what you're talking about.
Damn. Can't remember. Anyways, that army dork that tried to make up stuff about Trump's phone call. He's also over in Ukraine at this point, helping out the ambassadors over there. So, but just Joe talking about how he's going to send in another U.S. Operative to oversee the day-to-day functioning of the Ukrainian government, which I'm sure will not set up Putin to think that Ukraine is just a Western client state.
Why would he think
Why
that?
would he think that? Yeah. Why would Russia and Putin then think that they need to invade Ukraine because the West has somehow taken over wholesale the government, and that is a threat to Putin? Why would he think that? No idea.
He should contact your embassy, and I would be very pleased if you will have a certain person who can come either from Washington or whenever. We have here, I don't remember his name, the Ukrainian origin American prosecutor. He is a little bit old. I sent to the Jeffrey his name, and he was ready to come and to be assistant and advisor with a very good experience in the American system, and he can be the person of trust with the new prosecution system. I think this is exactly the right time to do that, and if he is still ready to come and to cooperate from the very first step, from the very first minute of the new prosecutor, that is exactly what I'm looking for.
Well, let me get in contact with the Justice Department and pursue that. I'll get his name and let me find out where that is, because it is in our interest, obviously, to provide professional assistance as quick as we can so this gets up and started in the right direction. So I will move on that as soon as we hang up. I'll put that in train, and I'll get back to you as to what I'm able to do.
Absolutely.
To be clear,
Second,
pause. To be clear, for the context of this clip that we're getting to, this is something that was already discussed beforehand. That is something that the U.S. government, the current administration, had set as a requirement. It sounds in this small clip that Poroshenko is requesting this person, but he's saying he's requesting something that was already required of him, and basically saying he's willing to accept it now.
Well, it sounds like, when they fired the prosecutor, they created a hole in the government that needed to be filled, and so Joe's, putting forward the name of an American insert that can be loyal and doing what Joe wants and needs, and Ukraine's saying, okay, well, we're willing to do that now to fill this gap.
So it wasn't just that. So like there's other requirements. One of the requirements was firing the prosecutor. The second one was restructuring how the prosecutor's office works in the government, and put the IG over it, and made some required structural changes to the bureaucracy that the administration had required as a prerequisite for moving forward with the release of the money. So there was there's other things, and one of them was they had already, as part of replacing the prosecutor, had already agreed that they wanted to have an American representative, a person of trust in the legal system there.
And this matches with what I was talking about in the previous section, right? So we have this financial system that allows us to create leverage over countries, and what do we utilize it for? We utilize our financial system to create leverage to give Joe Biden's family what they want, to give the Clinton family what they want, to give the Obama family what they want, to help enrich all of these politicians and ambassadors and all of these different politicians, etc. And we did have this system again. It was all for the promise of the security of the U.S. And instead of using it, like the same thing with the strategic oil reserve, instead of using it to secure our national interest, instead of using the financial system to secure our national interest, we're merely using it for the cynical securing of Joe Biden's interest, both our financial system and for the oil reserve. It's all the same version of what they're doing, just in different contexts.
Yeah. Okay, so continue.
Thank you very much indeed. This is exactly what I'm looking for. The second thing is that I want to thank you that you give me your word that immediately when we change the legislation and I appoint the new prosecutor general, and it would be Yuri Lutsenko as we agreed on our previous meeting in Washington, and when it happened, we can have this loan guarantee, and thank you very much.
Okay, so he said that the U.S. government is dictating to the Ukrainian government the content of legislation, the structure of the bureaucracy, and they're getting prior approval of who will be their prosecutor. This level of involvement is not like normal between countries. This is basically Ukraine being micromanaged by the current administration.
And if I had to guess to translate from Ukrainian positions to our positions, I think the position is essentially the Attorney General.
Yes.
So this would be like China dictating to the U.S., we want you to have this Attorney General put in place, and we want you to get rid of this other one because they're looking into stuff too much. And so that's essentially what Joe Biden's doing. And again, this matches up. This is the real substantive phone call that Joe Biden was referencing when he had I think it was with the Council on Foreign Relations when he was doing a talk or something in front of them. And he said, I told them to fire the prosecutor and I was going to leave in 6 hours and they wouldn't get the $1 billion. And goddamn, they got rid of the prosecutor and I gave them the $1 billion. This is that phone call that matches with those words.
Yes.
All right. So
the thing they said was Russian disinformation for so long, right?
Oh, yes. It's Russian disinformation to play a clip of Joe Biden speaking words.
Yes.
Let's hear. So Petro Poroshenko also asked Biden to condemn Petro's political rival and demanded that the U.S. not give funds to his political rival. And Joe Biden promises to do everything he can to make sure that Poroshenko gets the votes and that his political adversaries are not supported by the U.S. because that's what democracy looks like.
This is almost majority in the parliament. And those who goes to the United States, Samopomich, Timoshenko, and Leshko, who do not go there, for different reasons, completely against that. Because this is the political reason. This has nothing to do with the essence of the agreement. This is just a dirty political tricks. And that's what I'm asking from the Jeffrey. please do not give the grants to the Samopomich. Do not give them money. Because this is not a financing for the opposition party. This is the financing of the absolutely irresponsible political leader who is doing very bad things for the future of my country and for the Ukraine, for the security and for the stability. That's, I think, first of all, I am completely satisfied with the messages they received in Washington. They were quite strong and quite decisive.
Yes.
I think that would be a good idea if you continue to have a press on Samopomich, because if Leshko and Timoshenko, this is a loss. On Samopomich, because you support them, in that situation they could give a positive response, because without Samopomich we cannot even expect any positive things on the constitutional changes.
Okay. All right. Well, look,
that would be impossible, because if I can count on me with a law, election law, I can find out the votes. Without Samopomich, I cannot find out the votes on the constitutional changes. This is very simple.
All right. We will do everything to help you to get the votes.
Okay, so it doesn't really matter about whether or not Poroshenko or his political rival is the better candidate, or whether or not whatever the content of the constitutional changes or laws they are trying to pass. It doesn't really matter, because what matters here is that Biden and his administration, the Biden administration, were providing aid to Poroshenko's campaign by making basically they're criticizing his adversaries in the media with the hope of getting Poroshenko more votes.
We've it's been a really successful record the U.S. has had lately of installing wholesale quote unquote elected representatives into various quote unquote democracies, just installing them, the ones that the U.S. wants, and then those countries going on to not collapse in days. It's been really good track record of that.
This is
2 years.
This is an insane level of coordination between Biden personally and Poroshenko's campaign, and the trying to pass of constitutional amendments to their country. Can you imagine any other politician in another country coordinating so much to try to garner support and pressure on our country to change our constitution?
In this question, are you assuming that Joe Biden's not a Chinese citizen?
Yes.
Then no.
Okay, so moving on.
Let me ask you one thing before I forget. Privat Bank. I understand the governor of the bank is tentative about setting a date certain for the transition to take place, and I'm being told secondhand that, I don't know if this is her position for sure, that she is unsure of a date until she gets an agreement from you. Here's what I've told them. I've told them to get back to her and set a date, and I would talk to you about the date, because this is getting very, very close. What I don't want to have happen, I don't want Trump to get in a position where he thinks he's about to buy onto a policy where the financial system is going to collapse and he's going to be looked to pour more money into Ukraine. That's how he'll think about it before he gets sophisticated enough to know the detail. So anything you can do to push the Privat Bank to closure so that the IMF loan comes forward, I would respectfully suggest is critically important to your economic as well as physical security.
Wow, that aged well. Economic and physical security. Wow, that really aged beautifully.
I know it's difficult. I know.
I think you can continue, sir.
Kolomoisky is a pain in the ass and a problem for everybody, but it really is critical that you guys figure this one out. And you've been good. You've publicly spoken out as I've asked you to do. You've done that. I just want you to give the what's she called, the commissioner, the governor, the governor of the bank. Give her some spine. Let her know that you're going to be standing there when she sets a date and moves forward.
This is very important what I hear from you, and I think that on the 22nd of November, on Tuesday, I will have a final report from Ernst & Young audit, and we agreed that me, Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, Governor, I invite Arseny and our security officers should meet and make a decision about the date. The only reason I have, after 22nd, when I have an audit report, we have a voting of the budget in the parliament, where Kolomoisky has a significant number of members of parliament, and the Prime Minister asked me to vote budget first and then launching the process. This is the confidential information, but
I will keep that with me. I will keep that with me.
Okay. So it sounds like, I know I'm reading a little ahead here. Sounds like they wanted to nationalize Privet Bank, but they didn't want to do it before they voted on the state budget for the year, because the person who owns or runs Privet Bank has a lot of political power in their equivalent of Congress. And if they were to just steal his bank and nationalize it before voting on the budget, perhaps he could leverage his political connections to make sure that budget didn't pass. So Poroshenko wants to get that budget through Congress before they nationalize the bank, and then pull the old switcheroo and then nationalize the bank anyways.
Yes. So in this clip, Biden pressured the Ukrainian president to move forward with the nationalization of Privat Bank. Before Trump got into office. It was very important for Biden that this bank become nationalized before Trump took office. Why is Biden coordinating the nationalization of a foreign bank? What is he trying to hide? Both questions I would like to know the answer to. Both men here were talking about the Kolinsky guy, right? Who is the former owner of Privat Bank. Kolinsky, whatever his name is, also held the controlling interest in Burisma, the company that was paying Hunter Biden for access to his father. And Biden and Hunter met with this individual, the one who owns the bank and also had the controlling interest in Burisma, according to emails found on Hunter's laptop. So they have a lot of previous experience with this individual who's now being about to have all his property raided by the Ukrainian government and his bank taken from him. So Poroshenko is saying he wanted to wait to raid Kolinsky's assets and seize the bank until after the Ukrainian government voted on their budget, for fear that if they had raided before the vote, that Kolinsky's allies would oppose the budget. We don't know what all this means.
It's a very complicated story.
It's
a lot of moving parts.
But again, Biden is affecting political actions in Ukraine directly. These political actions he's affecting and directing, they have a direct effect on Biden personally and his family.
Yeah, we don't exactly know why he would be pushing to nationalize the Ukrainian bank. However, nationalizing a bank is a really big step. And the fact that the primary owner of that bank also has a primary stake in Burisma, the gas company where Hunter Biden has a job at, who also was being investigated by a Ukrainian prosecutor that Joe Biden, we just heard, leveraged to get him pushed out so that he would stop investigating Hunter's company, and that now Joe Biden's trying to destroy one of the primary investors in Burisma. It's really difficult to know or to link all these pieces together, because there's obviously a lot of stuff going on in the background that we aren't that hasn't been leaked out yet, that we don't know. Certainly somebody knows. I'm guessing Joe knows. Probably Hunter knows. Well, Joe might actually literally not know anymore, but Hunter probably knows. And it begs a lot of questions. So we'll be honest with you that we're not exactly sure what all of this means. It just seems it seems strange and worthy of investigation why the Vice President of the United States seems to have undue influence over these very hyper-specific policy decisions and employment decisions that the Ukrainian government is doing. And all of these seem to be somewhat related to Burisma and to Hunter Biden collecting money from them. Not to mention that this emergency cleanup before Trump takes office, a phone call taking place on November 16th, will remind you that a story last week about the biotech company MetaBiota, how Hunter was seemingly involved with them, and they were collecting millions of dollars from the Defense Department, that the Defense Department suddenly ended a $24 million 2-year contract with them, just all of a sudden ended the contract on November 15th, 2016. And we said last week, oh, this kind of seems like maybe some kind of attempt to cover certain things up or to eject corruption before Trump gets in and finds it all. And then we have the day after on November 16th, this phone call where, again, Joe Biden attempting to push him to finish nationalizing a bank before Trump takes office. For what reason? We don't know, but it appears that all of these different maneuverings are in order to cover something up. Joe Biden in this call specifically stating that the reason to do it is so that Trump isn't able to see it. What is it that he doesn't want Trump to be able to see? We're not exactly sure, but it's a cover-up. It clearly is a cover-up as stated by Joe Biden.
Also, Biden and his family are involved in Ukraine in so many different ways. Bio research, the energy companies, as well as directly, involved in their politics, the creation of their laws, the hiring of the election, quote unquote, of their political officials. Yes, he's involved in so many different ways, and Biden's undue influence over their internal politics is the internal politics of another country. On its own would be strange. If any politician in America had this much undue influence on the internal politics and the creation of laws and the amending of their constitution, that would be strange enough and questionable enough. But combined with his many personal connections and financial entanglements with the country, this story, these phone calls are worthy of investigation. Now, Hunter was on the board of Burisma from 2014 to 2014 to 2019. So the removal of this person, Kulinski's, from being the primary holder, the controlling owner of Burisma during that time period, is important, because who then became the controlling owner? Was it someone that Biden felt he could better control? Someone that was more willing to keep Biden's son on the payroll while doing zero work for an additional 3 years?
You know what might have answered that question is the Trump administration being allowed to investigate that.
Yes.
Odd.
So, yeah. There's a lot here that defies explanation for us, but is fishy enough that it definitely requires investigation.
We can see why they literally impeached Trump over his question about what was going on with Biden and Ukraine, because you scratch just a little bit on that, a whole bunch of stuff comes out immediately. There's so many layers to this, and it's so clear that there's so many layers to this. And Trump was obviously directly over target, and that's why they had to so viciously go after him to the point of impeaching him for merely asking the question. It was Vindman. That's the army door.
Vindman.
I wonder what Vindman's spot in all this was. I feel like you aren't able to do all these things without having some of the State Department on the payroll too. I'd like to see some of Vindman's assets.
Yeah, I would too.
Alrighty. We gotta get going here. So what else you got to say?
I remember everything.
Okay.
Moving on.
So So one of the things that might give us some insight as to what's going on here is, the FBI investigating Hunter's laptop. So Matt Gaetz, he asked about that this week. How is the FBI doing on investigating Hunter's laptop? Because they have Hunter's laptop, and you'd just be curious to know how they're doing with that.
So where is it? The laptop.
Sir, I'm not here to talk about the laptop. I'm here to talk about the FBI cyber program.
You are the assistant director of FBI cyber. I
Don't
want to
say
know
what
where
you're
Hunter
there
Biden's
for.
laptop is. Where is it?
Sir, I don't know that answer.
That is astonishing to me. Has FBI cyber assessed whether or not Hunter Biden's laptop could be a point of vulnerability, allowing America's enemies to hurt our country?
Sir, the FBI cyber program is based off of what's codified in Title 18, Title 18, Section 1030, a code which talks about computer intrusions, right, using nefarious intent, network.
Well, you've talked about passwords here. I mean, Hunter Biden's password on his laptop was Hunter02. He drops it off at a repair store. I'm holding the receipt from Max Computer Repair, where in December 2019, they turned over this laptop to the FBI, and what now you're telling me right here is that as the assistant director of FBI Cyber, you don't know where this is after it was turned over to you 3 years ago.
Yes, sir, that's an accurate statement.
How are Americans supposed to trust that you can protect us from the next colonial pipeline if it seems that you can't locate a laptop that was given to you 3 years ago from the first family, potentially creating vulnerabilities for our country?
Sir, it's not in the purview of my investigative responsibilities.
It's I'd love to hear that a little more often from the FBI, that it's not in the purview of their investigative responsibilities, because they sure seem to think a lot of goddamn things are in their purview to investigate and harass people on. I mean, is it in their purview to create an assassination plot and pull in one other person with 30 FBI agents and try to assassinate a governor? Is that within their purview of investigation? Is it within their purview of investigation to be the largest purveyor of child pornography servers on the internet? Allegedly being used as honeypots, but it doesn't seem like it's working very well. Is it in their purview to be tracking down your grandma because she took a picture of the Empire State Building, or the Washington Monument the day before Trump spoke on January 6th? Is it in their purview to do any of these things? And no. And then finally, this guy, all of a sudden, he finds his constitutional spine. That's not in our purview. It'd be irresponsible of us to be investigating these laptops. And it only seems to be outside their purview when it involves investigating their own, when it involves investigating Democrat politicians. Everything else apparently is up for grabs. Was it outside of their purview for the FBI to be investigating fake Russian packets being sent to Trump's server in Trump Tower? Was it outside of their purview to be looking at the Steele dossier and running around with that? Was that outside their purview? Apparently not. But investigating Hunter Biden's laptop, one of three, that has the entire conspiracy fact of the Biden family laid out plainly as can be, all of a sudden that's not in the FBI's purview to investigate. Interesting. Very interesting. Let's see here. So, the other thing is apparently the, now that we know from CNN, which we just saw in the previous segments, one of the previous segments, that CNN is now admitting that the Hunter Biden laptop is real.
One of three left-wing news sources to admit it.
Yes, one of three. It's interesting that they're now admitting that now, but they've not retracted the statement that the entire laptop was Russian disinformation. That was their line for 2 years. And they've just seamlessly transitioned to, the laptop is now real and authenticated. And they've not retracted their previous allegations that the Russian intelligence apparatus had deep-faked pictures of Hunter Biden having sex with minors, or deep-faked Hunter Biden smoking crack, or deep-faked Hunter enjoying M&Ms, or deep-faked all of the emails that were sent back and forth about the corruption of the Biden family. So it'd be interesting to, it's one thing to hear CNN say that the laptop's real. It'd be another thing to hear them retract their previous statements.
Yeah.
So on Tuesday, Matt Gaetz also introduced the, quote, "Spook Who Cried Wolf" resolution. Does that make an interesting acronym? SWCWR? No.
No.
Do you find that offensive, Dyer, that there's a piece of legislation talking about crying wolf?
Yeah, it's really...
do wolves cry?
It's a bad stereotype. Harmful stereotype.
Harmful stereotype. So Gaetz introduced the "Spook Who Cried Wolf" resolution. The resolution aims to permanently revoke the security clearances of the 52 former intelligence officials who attached their names and signed a public letter that claimed that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation. They had security clearances at the time. They would have been able to know or look up for sure whether or not it was considered to be Russian disinformation, and they chose to lie to the American people using their classified credentials or their security clearance credentials as proof to back up their statements, even though they were lying. Now that the mainstream media are finally admitting that the Hunter Biden laptop is independently verified as authentic, Matt Gaetz and the rest of us all agree that something needs to be done about these former spies who lied to get Joe Biden elected. And I think that the appropriate step one would be to revoke their security clearance. I think the appropriate second step would be to issue some kind of legal punishment for misusing their security clearance for political gain.
I have a more humane solution. We have them shipped to China.
I think we should send them to Mars.
China has a really good record, particularly under the Clinton administration, of taking care of our spies.
Mars would also do a good job of taking care of our spies.
Yes.
Should we move on to our next story?
Yes.
Alrighty. Our next story is about Joe Biden's tax plan. Because if there's one thing that the broken American financial system is missing, it's more taxes. That's how we solve the current economic crisis: is tax you more.
Right.
So,
makes sense.
Joe Biden's job approval rating has dropped again this week to the lowest point again. Just like the inflation numbers every week, it's like, oh, it's the newest, biggest numbers ever. Joe Biden's approval rating is the exact same way in reverse, where it's the lowest numbers ever. So what do you think Joe Biden did to turn around his failing poll numbers?
Maybe the exact opposite of everything he's been doing.
Did you say that he was going to impose new economic sanctions and crippling tax policies? Because if you did say that, that would be correct.
That's not what I said.
Oh, are you sure?
No.
It sounded like you said crippling taxes. Biden didn't seem happy with how fast and speedy the U.S. economy was recovering. And so he decided to engage the recession booster rockets of more taxes. I feel like I bungled that.
It still came across okay, but
yeah, you did a very good job writing that, and I bungled it, but I did recover it in my own special way. So, well, naturally, Joe Biden has to make up for this pesky progress that he's made during the Trump years.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to talk about first Biden's proposal from last year of a 20%, we're going to talk about Biden's new 20% capital gains tax, the one that came out this week, and how it is completely, who it would, if actually put in place, completely destroy the economy.
Well, it wouldn't so much destroy the economy as it would just destroy regular individuals.
I guess it wouldn't destroy the economy any more than anything else he's already doing would destroy the economy. So, however, first, before we get to the new policy about capital gains taxes, his current scheme, I want to talk about his first attempt about changing the capital gains tax from last year. Just for a bit of context, in June of last year, former Vice President Biden proposed increasing the top federal capital gains and qualified dividends tax from 29% to 39.6%. Can you believe it? 39.6% seems pretty bad, but it gets far worse. It would have been in addition to state taxes, and the average state tax plus a required 3.8% investment income tax brings the average capital gains tax in America to 49% with Biden's plan from last year.
Wow. That's pretty great. That kind of makes it like incentivizes the government to create inflation so that it artificially boosts the value of assets so that when you try to use or sell those assets, you now have to give half of it to the government. It's a great plan.
Yeah.
So in states like California, where capital gains tax is 13.3%, making the total capital gains tax 55.7%. This new federal tax rate would mean that Californians would be paying the highest capital gains tax in the world. The next highest capital gains tax rate would be the current world leader, which is Ireland, at 51%. The average capital gains tax for Americans with Biden's proposal would have been 49%, making America the second highest on average. Now, what do you think logically would happen if you drastically make it more expensive to invest in or operate businesses in America? Or just like, I don't, because like that would apply to your house too. So all of a sudden you just can't really afford to sell your house because you can't afford the tax on the increase in value, which counterintuitively would make your house less valuable.
And it's for people who have $1 million income. So the plan from last year was for $1 million.
Oh yeah,
just still a lot of people.
Yeah, it was just like the income tax. The income tax was only for 1%ers, people who made over $500,000 a year back in 1913, which was like several $1 million in today's money. Just like the income tax never went beyond that. It never applied to anybody other than 1%ers. I'm sure that this will be the exact same way, right? It'll always stay at $1 million, and it will never affect people who are middle class like you or I, right?
Nope.
Oh, which one was wrong? Was I wrong about this one, or was I wrong about the income tax? It must have been one of them, right?
Probably apply to us in the future.
Anyway,
so here, there's one more sentence here.
We already know what will happen. Just look at what is happening in California. Big companies are leaving California in droves, and so are just regular individual people.
So California already has an incredibly high capital gains tax, incredibly high business tax. And because of that, businesses are leaving and California's economy is failing. The biggest deficit in the country by far and per capita as well. So let's look at Ireland and how we told you Ireland has the highest capital gains tax in the world right now. And if Biden's trying to increase our capital gains, it'd probably be important to know what is the effect of the increased capital gains.
How dare you? Why would you do that? Hey guys, sorry I've missed the last few streams. Didn't get the notification on top of being distracted by Elden Ring. Turns out DLive logged me out on my phone.
Oh, well, sorry to hear that you missed the last few episodes, Eider Lupus, and thank you for the $10 and welcome back. And good luck.
I had assumed you hated me personally and had taken it very personally.
Good luck on Elden Ring.
Yes.
I hear that you cannot pet the dog. Or you can try to pet the dog, but then the dog eats you. That's what I heard.
There's no point in playing a game where you can't pet the dog.
You can feed the dog apparently.
I guess that's something. So if we're gonna have to talk about Biden's idea of increasing the capital gains tax, we should be talking about what the real life example of a high capital gains tax or higher than the average means. And so the highest at 51% is Ireland. And as a counter comparison, we have Japan, who has one of the lowest rates at 20.3%, far lower than ours. So out of Forbes's Global 500, the 500 biggest companies in the world, only 4 of those companies are based in Ireland. By comparison, Japan has 53 of the top 500 companies that are operating out of Japan. The big reason is because of being a better tax environment in Japan for businesses. It also reflects in the GDP, where Ireland's GDP is only 418 billion, whereas the GDP of Japan is 5 trillion. Your country is more prosperous, and when it has a better environment that encourages businesses to operate there. And you see the same example among the states within America. Companies tend to flood towards states with better tax environments. It's not the only reason, but is a big factor for where companies choose to operate out of. And it is an investment into your country or into the community when a company moves there. It brings prosperity to that. Sorry, I was hitting the table. It's also affecting the mic. So now this tax bracket applies to, like as we're talking about, $1 million income or investment gains. The problem of those people, the problem is that those people who have $1 million income are the ones who are investing in communities and creating businesses and creating jobs. When you punish those people for investing in businesses in your country, those people are incentivized to leave.
Well, and at some point, pretty quickly here too, it's not going to be just the investor class. If you happen to own a home, or if your parents, especially if your parents own their own home, they could, if the current inflation rate holds, which there's really no reason to think that it won't, in about 2 years, a lot of you are going to end up having near $1 million homes. If your parents bought a home 20 or 30 years ago, it might well be worth $1 million coming up here pretty soon. A lot of houses, a lot of things that weren't normally worth that much just because the inflation rate is picking up. You could start seeing yourself dipping into some of these higher brackets that you didn't realize, oh, well, I don't feel like I'm rich, and you aren't, because bread's going to cost you $8 a gallon for bread. But you're all of a sudden you're going to have these assets that are quote unquote worth an outrageous number of dollars, even though you're really not actually that much more wealthier in terms of real physical value that you have. But all of a sudden you're going to start dipping into these weird tax brackets that were quote only for the rich.
Yep.
Where am I? My turn. Oh, well, I wanted to improv. I don't want to be held to your reading standards. So right now, America shares a capital gains tax that is comparable to 37 other countries. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development has been working to coordinate a global tax rate so as to eliminate the incentive to move a business from one country to another to avoid taxes. That idea is very stupid, but it is even worse to intentionally make the U.S. less competitive. This is the biggest gift to China that Joe Biden can give.
Yes. So that was Biden's first attempt at increasing the capital gains tax, which thankfully failed. On Monday, Biden released a second attempt, number 2. Biden's fiscal year 2023 budget request released Monday would impose a 20% minimum tax on the unrealized capital gains for households worth at least $100 million. The Democrats are advertising this as a billionaire tax, though it applies to millionaires, not billionaires, hoping to capitalize on the class divide. They think that you should hate people who have money because, of course, they must have stolen it. They couldn't have earned it by investing into the community that you live in and giving you jobs and creating products that you buy and love, right?
Yeah. So what is unrealized gain, Dyer?
Unrealized gain is when something you own gains in value, so it can either be an investment, a car, or a house. And say that inflation causes your house to jump twice its normal value, like mine did. That difference between what it was worth and what it is worth now is an unrealized gain, because you could sell it at that price and you could make a profit, but you also could wait and it could go back down and you don't actually make that profit. But they already taxed you on that profit you could have made.
Yeah. So unrealized gain would be money that you don't have, but you could have. And so now that you've got to pay the tax, well, you don't have the money. So you have to find some way of getting that money, which means that you'd have to presumably sell the underlying asset to generate money. If that is some shares in Tesla, because you're, the Department of Energy secretary and you goaded the government into forcing Tesla to make more cars with the War Powers Act, that you can sell some of your shares of Tesla to pay the tax burden. That's great. If you're us and your house jumps by 10% or 30% because Joe Biden bungled the market, or they printed $8 trillion in the last 2 years, and all of a sudden all of this capital floods the market, and now all of a sudden your house is worth $50,000 more than it was last year. Well, how are you going to pay the tax on that? Well, you gotta sell the underlying asset. Well, I live in my house, so how are you going to do that?
BlackRock's looking to buy.
Huh?
BlackRock's looking to buy.
Oh yeah, they are. So you would have to either sell your house to pay for the taxes, and now you don't have a house, or you would have to somehow to pay the 20% on that $50,000. That's $10,000. Can you just come up with $10,000 extra dollars every year that you got to pay on that? It's like an additional property tax. And the answer is that no, most people wouldn't be able to just come up with an extra $10,000. Fox, it's not really going to be us. It's just people making over $1 million. Well, what did I just say about inflation? Inflation is going to start kicking people into that bracket who normally wouldn't be there. And just like income tax, which was originally for people making $500,000 a year in 1913 money, which is like $1 billion now. Just like it didn't stay at those rich people, it gradually moved its way down, and maybe it'll take 100 years, maybe it'll take 10 years, maybe it'll take 2 years. Who knows? But eventually, that unrealized tax, that tax on unrealized gains will come down to you. And that's not just people trading crypto, not just people doing game stonks. It's going to be your house, your car, your anything that you can imagine. They will start trying to tax it. And now your income tax report isn't going to just be reporting your income and any stock trades you made that year. Now all of a sudden you're going to have to start reporting all of your assets.
So, Fox, it said that it is people who are worth 100 million. Now, I know you're saying it's true, but also we don't want to set the precedent, even for 100 million, that a unrealized gain tax is reasonable at any net worth, because if people accepted that 100 million net worth, then why wouldn't they accept it at lower?
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
If we accept that is a reasonable way to tax someone, and taxing someone's unrealized capital gains will have the same, if not a worse effect at de-incentivizing companies being in America. And since are we the only country that would have such a tax? I think it'd be a pretty strong incentive for big companies to leave America.
Well, it also destroy the U.S. stock market, right? Because why would you? Yeah. Why would you invest money in the U.S. stock market that can be tracked? Why wouldn't you move your money to a foreign bank account and then trade in foreign stock exchanges?
Exactly.
Right. Okay, so am I reading here?
Yep.
All right, so the worst part, however, is the fact that the new tax could apply to unrealized gains. Dyer. What?
We can't be bearing the lead.
Oh.
Yeah.
I think you're missing a comma. The worst part, however, is the fact that the new tax would apply to unrealized capital gains. Dyer, we can't be bearing the lead on that, which means that if you have an investment or physical property that increased in value, the IRS is going to be taxing you on the increase in value of that asset, even though you didn't actually gain any liquidity or cash. If you or someone has already invested large sums of money into American businesses or stocks, you could be forced to sell your property or investment just to pay the taxes. And that would cause unnatural swings in the markets, because all of a sudden you're selling things that you normally wouldn't be selling, which when you sell stuff, it causes the value of those things to drop. So all of a sudden you've got these wild swings every year in the stock market and in the real estate market, because people are selling things when they normally wouldn't sell it, which would cause massive instability in those markets.
Yep. The insane idea of taxing unrealized capital gains is popular with the Marxist commie left for the same reason they support taxing wealth, not income. Both the capital gains tax of unrealized earnings and the I don't want to call it that, unrealized gains, it's not really earnings, and the wealth tax discourage property ownership because they oppose private property. However, the elites who wish to impose those economy-destroying policies on you only intend on to have these taxes apply to people they don't control, not to themselves.
Yeah, you can be sure that there'll be plenty of carve-outs in there. That's right. The Biden administration said that this tax was necessary because of how wealthy people are able to use loopholes to avoid paying current tax rates. Well, Joe Biden, who has spent over 50 years in Congress, do you think that he knows maybe why those loopholes exist? Is it maybe because, I don't know, he wrote those in there? The fact is that these kinds of taxes will not be paid by Democrat Party elites. These new taxes will be used to reduce the wealth and influence of potential political adversaries. That will be definitely for sure.
Yeah, and then also a way to punish someone for another thing that they could mess up on their taxes. They could then charge them as a crime for not paying their taxes properly.
Yeah, this would be a way to try to evaporate a lot of different people. I can see Daily Wire being a target here. Fox News hosts being a target. A lot of different. I can see like Crowder probably being a target of this. Just everybody being, oh well, now we've got to audit you because you've got a lot of assets.
Yep. All the stuff you own for your business. Well, that might add up to $100 million, and now you have to pay a tax on all your property you have, and now you have to sell it, and you can no longer actually run your business.
Yep. Alrighty.
So whether or not this insane tax passes rests again on Senator Manchin with the current 50-50 Senate. If this goes to vote in our current 50-50 Senate, it'll be Manchin who decides whether or not it passes or not, just like he voted down the previous capital gains tax hike. He previously voted against the increase of the capital gains tax last year. He said that this tax is, quote, a tough one, and that he wants to talk with the Biden admin and negotiate other options. With the goal of decreasing the deficit, which is he says, I'll vote something if we can reduce the deficit.
Yeah. So in some speeches about this, Joe Biden did his often cited theoretical falsehood of, oh, well, you got teachers and firefighters, they're paying 30% income taxes, and these like rich Wall Street bankers, they're only paying 8% income tax because they aren't taxed on their unrealized capital gains, and that's not fair. So you sit there and you listen to that, and it's like, oh wow, that's crazy that these rich people, they only have to pay 8% while firefighters and teachers are paying 30%. And Joe Biden's proposed solution is to make it so that the Wall Street bankers have to pay 30% or more too. When the real idea, the real problem with that is, why are teachers and firefighters and me included, and Dyer and other middle-class people, why are we paying 30% income tax to start with? That's insane. The idea that you're going to sit there and say, oh, well, it's very burdensome for a teacher to pay 30% income tax. The way you're going to help them is by making somebody who's not related to them pay a higher tax. How does that help the teacher or the firefighter? It doesn't at all. This is just purely about this like visceral need by people, or that the Democrats are trying to exploit in people to see other people punished. It's not that they're going to improve your lot in life, but by punishing other people, maybe you'll be distracted enough to not be upset at them. It's like, oh, well, they're really helping me by punishing this other person. That's what they want you to think. When the reality is that they're not helping you at all. This is bread and circuses. This is the Democrat Coliseum. This is, putting people up in the town square and locking them in a stock so you can throw fruit at them. And it doesn't really improve your lot in life. In fact, you now you're out of fruit. But it makes you feel good on a visceral level that you got to hurt somebody else. And that's what the Democrat, it's the most disgusting form of political organizations, or of social organization, and the Democrats love it, and they exploit it every chance that they get. Nobody explained, and Joe especially did not explain, how increasing taxes or creating taxes on unrealized capital gains so that big Wall Street bankers have to pay more money, that none of that is explained as to how that helps a firefighter or a teacher. None of it does. Yet they will continuously reference those people as the reason why they're doing this.
Yep.
All right. So I think this is our last story, which is good because I'm fading out here.
Fading out?
Huh?
You're fading out.
Yeah. Let's see here. Well, you don't sleep anyway. So Joe Biden doesn't care about minorities. So this week, Joe Biden took a break from saying the N-word and calling black kids roaches to sign a bill that makes lynching a federal hate crime. Basically,
wasn't it already a hate crime?
Yeah.
What?
Well, no, it was just a crime. It was just a crime. Now it's a hate crime, which is a unreal moniker addition to it. So basically, all the news around the lynching bill is total nonsense. The only thing that you need to know is that murder has been illegal in 50 out of 50 states for quite a long time now. And that there have been no recorded lynchings in the FBI statistics for over 50 years. I looked as far as I could. Every article talking about this bill cites that 4,000 people have been lynched. But those 4,000 people were lynched between 1850 and 1960, which is bad, but that has nothing to do with modern today now.
You got to put it in perspective, right? So right now, minorities are killed by the thousands every year in the meat grinder that is Democrat cities. And while Joe has vowed to refund the police, we aren't holding our breaths that policy actually being implemented, because his party is all the defund the police party. We don't want to have police in our communities. We want to have what is it? Social workers.
Yes, social workers.
Let's go send social workers to a domestic abuse situation. Have them get shot. That'll solve this problem. More probably in those predominantly black communities, there'll probably be a black social worker, also another black on black crime. I mean, you guys are not. They're not actually addressing what is really victimizing those communities. So when faced with a choice between doing something that would actually help minorities, the Democrats, of course, chose to do something meaningless, a virtue signal with zero substance. This law will not hold one lyncher accountable. What I promise you will do is it will not hold anyone accountable for the gang crimes or the violent crimes happening in Democrat cities. It will not help one victim. Not one black victim will be helped by this law. Not one modicum of justice will be found through the application of this law. In fact, I doubt you will find an example where this law is logically applied, because no one's getting lynched.
Yes. So choosing to be frivolous over substantive is just the way the Democrats operate. Recently, they did this with the selection of the pedophile enabler, Ketanji Pedo Brown, for Joe Biden's Supreme Court pick. Instead of selecting a sound legal mind to protect the constitutional rights of all citizens of all colors, the Democrats instead chose to virtue signal by choosing a brown uterus owner that is soft on child rapists.
Birthing person.
Yes.
So, and if you thought that it was bad to diversity hire an unqualified black woman to be a judge, have you met Kamala Harris? And Joe and Congress just vowed to do the same thing. Sorry. Oh, thank you. That makes a lot more sense. Joe and Congress just voted to do the same thing with astronauts. Oh, that couldn't end badly. Can you imagine Kamala Harris in space? So the latest spending bill set aside funding for putting the first woman and first person of color on the moon, which, given the level of the completeness we saw, competence we saw with Jackson, I think that the moon has enough craters. I think the moon might become their final resting place. Yeah. Maybe it's just because Biden has a deep-seated interest in keeping black people as far away from him as possible, up to and including the moon.
That is true. So I nominate Ketanji Pedo Jackson to be sent to the moon as the first black woman. So I think that would be historic to send her to the moon. Maybe Kamala Harris could also go. And let's also notice that this is literally the opening plot to the movie Iron Skies, which is a parody movie where a what's her name? Freaking heck, I forgot what her name was. Either way, they make this joke that it's a Republican woman is the president, and her campaign poster, which I've got up on the screen here, this is literally the plot of a parody movie, that she is sending a black person to the moon, and she's campaigning on that. And this is literally the plot to Iron Skies. So we will, any day now, have the revelation that the Nazis really escaped to the moon and that they're coming back. So I can't wait for that.
So I very much believed you could find a black female astronaut who would be competent and know how to do the job just fine. I'm sure you could find many people who could be qualified. You're not starting off qualified to be an astronaut. They take someone who has a skill set and then has to do a lot of training and preparation, right? But I am extremely worried with their track record of once they've decided to hire someone based on race and gender, they have a knack for picking someone who can't do the job one bit just to be a really bad example of I guess it's a good example of why diversity hiring is bad, but a really bad example of the group for which they're trying to pick from, right?
It's pretty wild that Joe Biden in one hand is outlawing lynching, which is not a problem, and on the other hand, he's tricking black people into crashing themselves into the moon. It's a little wild.
Oh my god. So he's not going to lynch them. He's going to do something far worse. Terrify them on their long journey to certain death.
Joe
oh
Biden,
my god.
Instead of lynching black people, Joe Biden just wants to slam them into the moon. My god.
Yeah. The crashing into the moon is probably not going to be a high-speed event either. It's just going to be
over the course of 3 days, we'll get to watch.
Yes.
Thanks, Joe.
So while the Democrats are busy doing all that virtue signaling, that's hard work for them, victims of their previous virtue signals are now paying the price. Last year, we brought you an old story about the Supreme Court giving approximately half of the state of Oklahoma away to the... That's not how you spell Cherokee.
I spell things phonetically for you, Dyer.
Oh, Cherokee Indian Nation. Thanks.
Even sometimes that doesn't help.
Well, I know the word Cherokee. Come on. Truck,
How am I supposed to know which words you do and don't know?
It's a truck.
You just said old story when the word says odd story. Doing my best.
A D and an L, they're the same thing.
They're not.
Both
They're different letters.
They're both letters.
Oh my god. Let's see here. So this story that we brought to you last year about most of Oklahoma being just given away to the Indians.
So it's an old story?
Well, it's a story that we covered. It was an odd story at the time. It's now an old story. The case centered around the event centered around a case called McGirt versus Oklahoma. McGirt raped 3 4-year-olds. Yeah, well, he raped 3 4-year-olds, and Oklahoma wanted to put him in jail for 500 years. Great, I love that.
Which for 5 minutes.
Yes, it should have been a very simple decision, and all of a sudden the case got muddied by the racist leftist policy that non-whites are savages and that it's okay to not hold them to the civilized white standards.
This racist idea has been codified in our laws surrounding Native American reservations, making it impossible to enforce state and local laws on anything that happens to tribe members or on reservation land. This has the effect of allowing Native Americans to do horrific things and to have horrific things happen to them, and no one faces any legal consequences.
Because that's progressive.
Yes. That's taking care of minority groups, right?
Yeah, it should. So McGirt used this leftist idea to argue that while he was raping 4-year-olds, 3 of them, that he was only doing it on historically tribal land. Modern maps did not agree with him, and they showed the areas not being current tribal land. However, they were former historic tribal land, which would be literally all of America. And so after arguing that he shouldn't be held accountable for raping 3 4-year-olds because it happened on tribal land that wasn't currently marked as tribal land, his case made it to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court, instead of just saying, pedophile rapists go die in prison, they agreed with him that it was okay to rape 4-4-year-olds on tribal land, because they declared that he was correct, that this historic tribal land was not in fact American land, it was not in fact Oklahoman land, and that it was in fact tribal land. And this didn't just affect his little case, because the precedent was set that his map, his historic map of tribal land, now being the accurate map of Oklahoma, essentially made overnight, with a snap of the finger, that Oklahoma, half of the state, was now tribal land. It had something like 5% of the landmass of Oklahoma was reservation land, but after the McGirt decision, 50% of the landmass of Oklahoma overnight became reservation territory.
That is insane.
Yes, and we said that at the time. So this decision not only got McGirt off the hook for raping 3-4-year-olds, again, this was from his state prosecution. He's still responsible for it federally, and he went back through the process and has now been put in jail for I think it was 70 years. But like the state had, like, why should the federal government have to take care of that when the state government was taking care of it?
70 years? That's such a waste of time. Just 5 minutes in a wood chipper and job's done.
I think you have 5 minutes to go through a wood chipper. You get a better wood chipper. Anyways,
okay.
So this effectively not only got a pedo rapist off the hook, it also gave half of the land area to Oklahoma to the various Native American tribes surrounded by it. The effects of this, beyond just allowing a pedophile rapist who rapes 4-year-olds to get off the hook, we also have this local news report, which Tucker Carlson brought to our attention earlier this week. Let's watch.
For anybody.
He was her son, Danny Wayne Reed.
He was 28. He's a father of 2. He was, to me, perfect.
Danny and his girlfriend, Cindy Jones, had gotten into an argument at their home in Fort Gibson. Kim says Danny wanted to leave the situation and was trying to call someone to come get him.
Before he could get the call made, she went and got the gun and come back and shot him. He didn't make it.
The Muskogee County District Attorney's Office initially charged Cindy with manslaughter. Shortly after, she bonded out. Muskogee County DA Larry Edwards says his office then upped the charges to second-degree murder.
The state was ready to roll with it, and then McGirt kicked in.
Since Danny was Cherokee, the McGirt decision meant the Muskogee County DA's office couldn't touch Cindy's case.
Oh, so apparently you can just kill Indians now. Now, mind you, he had a Cherokee card, which a lot of people will get those because the left has created this institutionalized racism where you get perks for that. And, you know, that's your choice. Go for it if that's what you get. But he didn't live on tribal land. He didn't live as a tribal. He didn't live on a reservation. He didn't really have any connection to the tribe other beyond his blood. He was an American living in American territory. And then all of a sudden he gets murdered. And because his blood test comes back that he's, got 1 drop in him, all of a sudden it's not a big deal to murder him. So we've got legalized murder of Indians in Oklahoma now. And only leftist policy could have figured out how to do that. So at the same time, Joe Biden this week has allowed made illegal a thing that hasn't happened in years and also has already been illegal. Murder's already illegal. The virtue signaling that. And then now, in the background, they've got the same leftists making it legal to murder Indians, trying to kill black people on the moon, and allowing pedophiles to get off the hook. Odd that 2 of these stories were related to the left allowing pedophiles to get off the hook. Kind of strange.
Yeah, it's strange. It actually kind of seems to feed into a long trend of similar circumstances.
Yeah.
You don't like that?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Your dog's got the racist dog whistle. So that's what the left is doing this week. So you'll hear the big story for sure that Joe Biden signed an anti-lynching bill, but you're not going to hear that the Supreme Court effectively legalized the murder of Indians, anybody with Indian blood. I mean, essentially under this law, if I was Elizabeth Warren, I would not go to Oklahoma. I mean, no joke. This law would allow somebody to, again, you still face federal charges, but you won't face state charges, to anybody that's got Indian blood in them. So
Yep.
That's very leftist. Very leftist.
Oklahoma's a mostly Democrat state, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I for one, I think that Indians are not savages, and I think that they can be held to the same civilized standard of the rest of the country,
and should be,
and that they should be. So I completely rebuke the notion that they can't be held to the same standard and that they should be allowed to be executed en masse because I don't know, racism.
So Oklahoma has 48 senators, most of which actually are Republicans.
Yeah, Oklahoma, I don't think so. I'm pretty sure that they're a red state. Actually,
Yeah,
we have a map.
So how the fuck,
Oklahoma's a red state.
Republicans, are you allowing this in your state?
Well, no, this was a Supreme Court decision, so they didn't have a choice.
I feel
I think that they should be openly in rebellion against the Supreme Court decision. I think
the state government should rebel against the idea that they do not have sovereign ability over their own state land and that they cannot enforce laws to protect their people. I think the Supreme Court doing such a ruling, if I were in charge of the state, I would oppose it. I would continue to oppose it. And I think that is a reason to disengage from the federal government.
Well, so I remember at the time when we covered this about a year and a half ago that there was the leftist interpretation of it was like, oh, this kind of this funny quirk of the legal system, and it actually, it kind of is a good thing, and it makes it a little bit quirky and makes people ask questions. They learn about the history and all the bad things that we did to the Indians, and the reality of it is that you can just in a domestic dispute, just kill an Indian, and it's not a big deal. Again, this guy was, I keep saying Indian, and I shouldn't, because this guy was an American who happened to, as we all do, have the blood of many different nationalities in us, because we are the melting pot. A lot of us are European descent, Latin American descent, apparently Native American descent. A lot of us have all of those mixed together because we're a very diverse country and we're humans. We screw a lot of different people. And so this kid was an American kid, and because the left is racist, they want to classify one of our American, compatriots. They want to classify him differently because he has one drop of Native American blood in him. And so apparently he's less human, and it's not as big of a deal to murder him. That's crazy. I'm upset.
And you should be. And also, in addition to being upset, also tired.
I am also tired, yes.
All right, so
that was a long show. Good show.
Long show. A long list of. We have 18 people following us on D Live right now.
We do. I noticed that.
I actually didn't follow YouTube this show. I apologize to everyone on YouTube. Did we have any number of followers and comments there?
No, we had comments towards the earlier start, and then they kind of fell off. I think a lot of them moved over to other channels, hopefully.
Yeah. We had a small number of people on Rumble, but not enough. Everyone go over to Rumble. Follow us there, please.
And we are aware that it is frustrating to you guys to not know when exactly we're going to be streaming. We have got it pinned down to Sunday. We have got it pinned down to sometime between 2 and 4. Again, we're shooting for 2 p.m. Eastern on Sundays. I think we're getting better and better at hitting that, but we'll definitely be around by 3. And we'll have some more discussions with Dyer and I now that we've done this for a few weeks in a row to figure out what time makes more sense for us, what's more manageable and achievable for us. And so we know how frustrating that is, but I guess start paying attention around 2 on Sundays, and we'll be around within the next several minutes to hours of 2 p.m. on Sundays.
It's the downside to us having full-time jobs, having families / boyfriends, and other projects that we're working on.
Dyer?
What? You have a boyfriend.
Oh.
And I have a family. That was.
Okay. I misinterpreted the plural there.
All right. So we have full-time jobs, and we're doing this as a hobby, and it's not like we have a farm that you guys paid for, and some chickens and employees and a whole staff, and then just read news and not actually doing any research. We don't have the privilege of flexibility of it being our full-time job.
Yeah.
And though we very much appreciate you guys watching us and being flexible with us, we got our lives. We also got to balance at the same time.
Yep. And again, we can't stress enough how much we appreciate all of your viewership and support.
If you give us enough money, though, we might buy a chicken.
Yes. Yeah. So, the new we'll do like a donation like thermometer thing. So like at like $30, we'll force Dyer to watch CNN Plus. At $50, we'll force him to watch the Chinchilla Show from Daily Wire Kids, and then at like $100, we'll force Dyer to buy a chicken and take care of it. I support all of these things.
You know how hard it's going to be to keep a chicken alive in my house?
I think that would be that would be like an experiment in its own. How long can you keep a chicken alive at your house? Like, okay. I think it would be minutes. I think the second that you take your eyes off that thing, it's gone. Like, gone to the point where you can't even find where it went.
So Willow and Shadow have killed so many birds in my area. They're running out of birds.
Do they? They actually eat them though, right? Like it's hunting. It's not just like murder.
Yes, they'll eat them if I let them.
So you force it to just become murder when it could be hunting.
Yes. So generally, my first reaction when they bring a freshly killed bird up to me when they're planning on eating is I tell them to drop it, and they're good boys and girls, so they drop it, and then I throw it into the field behind my house.
From their perspective, you're just a psychopathic murderer, right? Like they're like, oh my god, like we brought our master this like treat that we like spent time and energy to like hunt down and provide sustenance for him, which is like the highest form of honor they can bestow, and you're just like, no, the murder was enough. The murder pleases me. That's enough.
I do pet them afterwards, so they didn't really do anything wrong.
So you reward them for the murder. So it's what you're saying.
So what they've learned is the murder of small woodland animals is a good thing.
And you wonder why they keep bringing them to you, because it's the only time that you ever pet them.
No, I pet them occasionally once a year.
So at $100, Dyer will buy a chicken, and at like $1,000, Dyer will give his dogs one pet. That's what it's worth to him.
One pet, $1,000.
No more.
Okay. All right. We'll see you guys next week.
All right. Thank you guys.
Wolf out.
All right. Javiz signing off. See you guys. I'm so glad I didn't end stream yet.
What?
I didn't end stream yet.